Welcome to this week's episode of Campbell and Jones Meet the Monsters, the podcast where we chart the cinematic legacy of the classic monsters. I'm John Campbell. With me, as always, Brendan Jones.
John Campbell!
Yes.
Sorry, I was so excited. I just told you literally seconds ago, and someone did hear that I have a hot take on today's movie.
Hot take, coming in hot.
In hot. 1994's Interview with a Vampire.
Yes.
To date,
The Vampire Chronicles.
Oh yes, right. Colon. Sorry,
title.
I don't like talking about the colon, so let's move on. But I will say, my hot take is, after literal decades, we've charted these vampire films, specifically Dracula.
We started in the 1930s. We've been watching these for a while now. This is the best vampire movie we have seen.
Oh my gosh, the hot take.
This is the best vampire movie. I have a lot of problems with a lot of stuff in it, but this movie is about, and characters and so forth, but it is about the vampire existence in a way that almost none of the films we've seen, including the classic Dracula films, ever really get into. Very often in the movies we've watched, the vampire is the outside villain that has to be put down, and they are mysterious and they are awesome, and if they're Dracula, they're the fucking bomb. but they are the outside character. This movie, unlike we've seen Innocent Blood fairly recently and things like that, where they're trying to make I know,
Brandon, if you're gonna bring up Innocent Blood,
it was recent enough. It's just a movie where they tried to make the vampire one of the protagonists. Right. And try to give you a glimpse of their...
I see what you're saying. They are attempting to do some of the melancholy of the life of the vampire and the...
Not just melancholy, my voice is cracking, sorry. But not just melancholy, but just sort of the life of a vampire.
Right, yeah.
So for me, this was a big surprise because I haven't watched this movie in years. Yeah. And I have a lot of problems with Anne Rice. I have a lot of problems with the stuff that I think makes her work, and I can't wait to hear from our guest about what makes her stuff work. But I know that what makes it very popular for many people is sort of the overwrought romance stuff of it. And that, for me, it can work in a movie, but for me, I'm like, what's making it work here is this is almost the glimpse into the existence of the vampire. So here is my hot take. I was surprised at the end of it of how much I got out of it, enjoying it as a vampire movie. I really think it's the best one we've seen.
Interesting. Well, I don't want to say anything until, because I do want to bring in our guests here. Welcome to the show for the first time. Olivia Gray is with us.
Hello,
Olivia.
Everybody. Glad to be here.
Yes, Olivia, you were you're not only a friend of mine, but you're also recommended by frequent guest of the show, Elliot Lewis.
You're a friend of the show.
Friend of a friend of the show. And of course,
you're honored by their suggestion.
I mean, that literally I sent, as I do every season, because Elliot is our kind of third co-host when need be, basically. Elliot's on the show so much that,
Elliot is always welcome, and they are always
love Elliot.
They bring an enthusiasm and a snark and all of the things I like.
I think the enthusiasm is key, and I think that's a big reason why you're here as well, Olivia, is we do this every week. We've been watching decades and decades of these monsters movies, so we need people to come in with real enthusiasm for these things. So, but when I sent Elliot the list of this season, because the first thing I do when we compile the list for the individual seasons is I send it to Elliot, I go, which ones do you want to do? They said, I want to do this, this, and this, and you have to get Olivia to talk about Interview with the Vampire. And I said, done. That's a given. You luckily were available and willing to do it. So I do want to set in and ask you, why are you the person to talk about Interview with the Vampire? Why do you have to talk about it?
I just sort of gave you guys off.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was going like. That was some wasted content.
Intro into how early I started watching, or how early I got into the Vampire Chronicles, which was very young.
Yeah.
And like listen, these books were like so formative for me in just a like, oh God.
They were enormously popular from almost, I mean, from the get-go, but I mean, the first one goes back to 1976, long before you were born. And in fact, I read that first one in the 80s because my older brother had it, and I was like in junior high. But you were just saying you were starting these when you were 9 or 10. I mean, and I did read some Stephen King and stuff when I was 9 or 10, but still, wow, even her non-erotic work is very erotic and very. Basically, you've given me a great case for a child abuse thing. I need to retroactively make sure you get to a safe place.
No,
is what I'm
listen,
saying.
I had little to no literary supervision as a kid.
Great.
I think I turned out great because of it.
Yeah.
And
Well, there's
fully
that.
endorse my. I watched the movie pretty early, and it's as we were saying also off mic, it's so pretty, and
Oh yeah.
like not understanding that, I was like, I love this and I love vampires.
I don't see anything wrong with hunting the living.
but you mentioned that it was immediately incredibly popular, and I think one of the things that is so cool about this series is that you can pretty much directly point to it as a source of the for better or worse, like romanticizing monsters. Like,
I think so. I think you're right, and I think one of the big things that I mean, before we even get to the movie, but I think one of the things that Anne Rice that broke her through and why she is a watershed moment in horror fiction is that she did take all the little threads from, I mean, because the Gothic romance is where vampire fiction comes from.
Mhm.
They had lots of the beautiful willowy maidens being seduced by dark but fascinating men who, whether they were supernatural or not. And then, of course, the vampires. So it's in Dracula. It's, of course, in Carmilla. It's in basically even the Penny Dreadful stuff like Varney the Vampire from way in the back. And she just said, yes. And she embraced that and built it up. And I'm not saying this in a bad way, but she was throwing in a bunch of like Barbara Cartland romance novel tropes. So she did make a romance out of it that suddenly made vampires much more a tragic, beautiful thing than horrifying monsters that come into your room and kill you.
Yeah.
But they still do that in here too.
Oh God! I mean, the body count is pretty fucking high, you know.
I will say that we will be talking about the movie in a second, but literally one of my favorite things in it is whenever I'm getting a little like, okay, yes, lush, and oh, you are so beautiful. Oh, yes. But like every 8 minutes or so, when they go to violence or when they feed, it is brutal. And I'm like, you have not forgotten that for all of Louis whining and as Lestat makes fun of him, philosophizing, they are killers. They are predators. And when that happens, I'm like, yes, the balance is very good in this movie.
Like I said, I'm so glad you guys enjoy it. I don't not enjoy this movie, but you're getting to. Thank God Neil Jordan had a little bit of my sensibility in there, where it is like, because as resident gorehound on the show, I will say, lush romantic vampires are not my preferred vampires. I do like there is a deadly creature of the night and it must be destroyed. And I do, and maybe this is why I would like some of the other books or something, because I am like, whenever Lestat is in the movie, oh, I'm on board for this shit. Louis,
Well,
little
you should read
dull.
the sequel.
Yeah, I know. I need to. I was looking at because I'm like, oh, the second one is called The Vampire Lestat, so I need to.
I have no idea why this didn't have a sequel. By the way, I mean, I
don't know
really
either.
don't, because it made the money.
It did. I was looking. This was very successful. We talk about a lot of movies that bomb on the show.
It leaves itself open for the sequel,
It has an
and all we
ending
have
that
to do
sets up.
is, I mean, except for they kind of capped it at the knees, because if I remember Lestat, the book, by the time that this is happening and Louis is being interviewed, Lestat is already building himself up as this performer rock star guy.
I
So,
guess, Brendan, it did get a sequel, and we'll talk about Queen of the Damned in a bit.
well, I know Queen of the Damned, where they're like, let's throw a bunch of stuff from the other books in there, and it doesn't work at all. But
Yeah.
and I
Let's,
don't.
let's do a total tone shift.
Yep.
And
we'll get somebody
terrible
on the same level of a Tom Cruise. What was it, Stuart Townsend?
oh boy,
Yeah.
yes,
now I'll
Townsend.
say, John, that I agree with you. Actually, a little too much of the.
I like the movie. I just
it
want
can
to
be
state,
very
I think this is a
when you
very
have the
good movie.
the mournful, regretful, weepy vampire
and
romantic guy.
And I'm a thank God he's played by an actor I really like, though. Luckily,
Yeah.
I think Brad Pitt does a lot. I think the cast here is brilliant.
Awesome.
I think Kirsten Dunst walks away with it. And I'm like,
amazing.
holy hell, you're 4 years old. I know this exaggeration.
She's 12, yeah,
but holy
yeah.
hell, are you a good actor already? And
For-
she's the most unnerving thing in the entire movie.
For years, and still today, like, I point to this movie as example of both Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt being incredibly skilled actors, and Kirsten Dunst, honestly.
Agreed.
Yeah.
But I get laughed at because this is a silly ditzy vampire movie, which is true, and they knock it out of the park.
They
with
do.
their characterizations.
I like on paper, like I said, that these are the kind of vampire things I hate. And I agree with you. I think, Brendan, you hit kind of my reaction too. Where there are parts where I start to go, all right, getting a little sleepy, but then it always picks me back up. And I think the cast, and I think Neil Jordan directed the shit out of this thing, man. And also a piece of trivia.
Did a great adaptation. As much as I'm sitting there going, I don't like her as a writer. And I'm sure there were people over her shoulder because
Brendan, this brought me to my trivia point. There weren't people over his shoulder. Anne Rice didn't write the screenplay we saw. Anne
not
Rice
at all.
Wrote an adaptation, and then basically, from what I gather, Neil Jordan completely rewrote the thing.
Well.
Olivia has yet another thing. Okay.
Olivia's coming in hot.
Hot take.
Yeah.
So in preparation for this,
Yes.
I reread Interview with the Vampire.
Nice.
And I held it in my hands as I watched the movie, and there are huge chunks of this that are taken word for word from the book.
Yeah,
It is a remarkably faithful adaptation.
It really
she was
and
famously extremely happy with the way this turned out. Anne Rice loved this movie.
When she in the books also gets to the nitty gritty, she never shies away from it. That's why it does work as a horror novel. Yeah. But her language, the way she writes, for me, especially just the prose of it, is so purple, it's so overwrought that I was like, yeah, I can see the romance novel in it, and that's what is the thing I don't like. Every now and then, I think they are killing people and making corpses and doing things. I'm like, good Lord, this is cool.
My assumption, and then once again, one of the things we talk about, this is an interesting panel of people because, Brendan, you've read some of the novels. Olivia, you're very steeped in them. I have never read any of the books. I've only seen this movie. But here's my assumption is sort of, you talk about Neil Jordan being a filmmaker. I think you talk about what his rewrites on the script was probably just a lot of making things more cinematic, taking things directly from the book, but finding ways to condense, build, turn it into a 2-hour narrative because it moves
and
pretty
the blessing of film over a book is that you don't have opportunities for purple prose.
Right. That's exactly it.
There's no long setting descriptions or descriptions of character because that all happens in an instant. And so you kind of gloss over all of those things.
And you having reread the book and then watched the movie, you can see that Neil Jordan, who I give him full credit because he brought this to life.
I mean,
but I will
aside from this, he's
I will
an
say that
talented director.
when you're looking at the pictures that are on the screen, that is all the stuff that I didn't like reading, but he's doing it visually. It is as lush as what she wrote, but for me, it's watching that camera glide through that and me not having to deal with her actual words.
The running thing we have over on Panel Up, where I'm always accused of not liking fantasy stuff, right? And one of my issues with fantasy novels is, I don't know why I put that in quotes, are they novels? Is
it's all the jibber jabber.
It's all the jibber jabber. It's all the description. So then when I see the movie of Lord of the Rings, I'm going, oh shit, there's all the stuff from the books. Like, now I understand.
Right.
I'm a very visual person. That's why, honestly, actually, I was looking at the graphic novel adaptation of The Vampire Lestat.
Oh,
and going
from
like,
Innovation
and
Comics
I'm going like,
from a
maybe
million
I
years
should read
ago.
that. That might be kind of interesting. But so I think Neil Jordan adds a lot to this he is very faithful, but yes, it becomes a movie. And also a lot of it is just Warner Brothers given the money and resources to do this. Because
they knew that they were coming in on a phenomenon.
We talk about a lot of schlock, so it's nice to see a handsomely, beautifully made, like prestige picture.
Yeah,
which I want to talk about,
especially coming off the crap we've been watching lately.
But also it's interesting because we cover the whole gamut of stuff that's coming out. I do think this fits into this early 90s prestige monster movie boom. You know, I do feel like this is of a piece with Bram Stoker's Dracula, with Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, with the idea that we're doing literary Oscar bait monster movies. And we're going to talk about Wolf
I have
as
a
well.
feeling that
big directors, big actors, lots of money that are trying to be emotional and intelligent. And
Now, I do think there would have been a film of the Vampire Chronicles at some point.
Oh yeah, just
but I
big,
do think it was totally kicked into gear by Bram Stoker's Dracula, and it was a success.
Yeah.
And then it was Warner Brothers going, do we have a property? Do we own something? Do we own the Anne Rice? Let's
give
do
us
it.
Another vampire.
Yeah, quick. What do we got?
It's still what they do to this day, or back in the 70s when it's Star Wars hits and Paramount goes, don't we have a star thing lying around?
Yeah.
I actually just watched a it's one of Molly Ringwald's first movies.
Oh, I know exactly the one.
Adventures in Space, and it came out.
Oh, Space Hunter.
Space Hunter: Adventures in the Forbidden Zone.
Yeah, crazy.
I saw that in the theater. I'm old.
It made everyone watching go, oh.
Yeah.
This is why Star Wars was so popular, because this was everything happening around it.
Yeah, the attempts.
Well,
to do
it
Star
wouldn't have
Wars,
existed without Star Wars. Star Wars did create that incredible boom, and you got some good space stuff out of it. You got a lot of bad space stuff out of it.
Yeah, Space Hunters was not one of those.
No, it's awful.
No, in fact,
actually, my God! But I did have a crush on Molly Ringwald when I walked out of that movie.
Adorable.
First thing I ever saw her in. And I was like, oh, she's cute. And then she was in all the John Hughes movies.
But
right.
Yeah, by the way, that's going to be a future episode of Michael Listman and I's the.
You're going to do Space Hunter?
That is. Yeah, we're going to do Space Hunter. That's a total action shelf movie.
Yeah, it is. It is.
In 3D.
I saw it in 3D.
Yeah.
My dad fell asleep while we were watching
Well, I kind of can see why.
That makes sense. Hey,
Yeah.
listen.
Yeah,
I had to elbow him.
We're
like,
gonna do that and Ice Pirates.
Ice Pirates.
Yeah.
Which at least is being a comedy. At least is like going, look, guys, we're not trying to really do Star Wars.
I love. Here's what's great about this show. You tune in to hear people talk about Anne Rice. You end up hearing about Space Hunter. Let's
get back to it.
I do want to, and then something, Olivia, you and I talked about in talking about before this, which is the controversy of the fans towards this movie, specifically with the casting of one Thomas Cruise Mapother. I'm sorry, Tom Cruise. Yes. And by the way, I guess should we rip this Band-Aid off? that Tom Cruise is my favorite actor ever. Look, and I know, and
No,
I take,
no.
yeah.
You think I'm getting angry? You
Yeah.
see my face
Yeah.
and you think I'm getting angry?
Well, I don't know. You defended him
it's that
earlier.
It's that I've found a fellow
Yes.
Tom Cruise lover.
I am a massive Tom Cruise.
Sorry.
There
is
are
it
multiple...
hard to find Tom Cruise lovers? The guy who's in
Well,
the
it's
most
no, I know it's
successful
interesting
film
for
of all
being
time right now.
probably
But
the
people-
biggest movie star. He is often slagged off.
Yeah.
Because he's a nut job.
Well,
I mean-
that's neither here nor there.
But I agree. He's an amazing actor. And I have loved him in many a film. And I wish I knew nothing about him so that I could just enjoy him as an actor because he is so good. And even when he's wrong for something, he attacks it and he is there. And in this case, people were worried because Lestat had been a character they had known for decades by that point, or at least a couple decades. And so they were very protective, as fans will be.
And it did seem...
And is he the Lestat of the novel?
Well, and it seemed like on paper, though, right? And it is like, oh, they just put the big movie star in this thing.
Into this, yeah.
And that
the actors are so good that you don't get thrown by the fact that neither Pitt or Cruise are doing the accents they should. They're doing kind of just sort of like, I am sort of, I don't know, slightly with a little British or upper crust. And you're like, you're Creole. And this guy is French.
I'm vaguely aristocratic.
I'm vaguely aristocratic is what they went for.
But I will say, loving Tom Cruise, I will say...
Loving Tom Cruise is your other podcast. Remember which one you're on right now.
It should be, man. Go back and listen to the panel episode of Mission Impossible, and I'm basically building a church around his character of Ethan Hunt.
Man.
But our patron saint of the impossible.
Oh, dear Lord.
This is maybe the most I've ever seen him completely disappear. And some of that is the makeup and look, but some of it is he knows what people are expecting out of this, and he just fucking destroys this part. And also, he's not the star of this movie, which is, I think, really bizarre, especially if you look at the poster, which we'll talk about in a second. But yeah, this was pitched as a Tom Cruise movie.
The one thing that I will say about this movie's main difference from the book is that he is so mundane in his kind of villainy in the book. Because then he goes on to become this super charismatic beloved character in the sequels, but in the first book he just kind of sucks. And the one thing about this movie that Tom Cruise does so well is say, no, like I'm both of these Lestats.
Yeah, he's already the one that will be the vampire Lestat. He knows. Well, it's also I'm sure there were talks with the director as well. They knew that in order to balance Louis' total milksopery but I do like the whole thing that Armand says, like, you are the next generation of vampire. You've got a soul. You actually feel bad for humans. That's weird. But in order to balance him being so dour all the time, you had to have this charismatic, flashy, unapologetic killer that Lestat is. And yes, Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt both embody their characters so damn well. Everybody in this is good. I'm sorry. Everybody. Nope. Stephen Ree, when he shows up and he's actually doing a French accent, which is kind of wacky, but I fucking love him.
No, I agree. Across the board, the cast
the cast is
great because once again, I did
Tandy Newton's in there for like 2 seconds and she's great.
Which is so interesting because she goes on to be the female lead in Mission Impossible 2. So obviously Cruise remembered her in some capacity.
Yes. And Xenu whispered in his ear, keep her in mind.
All right. But I do think I think across the board. And you mentioned Armand. I do think the section once Lestat leaves the movie, it is kind of like I was kind of losing it until Armand showed up, and I'm like, oh god, yes, Antonio Banderas, who's amazing as always.
The
Another guy
movie-
who is, I feel like all the actors in this, what you're kind of talking about, Olivia, are so iconic as movie stars that I feel like the big three that are in this, you forget, oh, they're really good. They're movie stars because they're all really good actors too.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think they were actually, in a very quiet way, challenging each other. Like, in other words, scene to scene, it's like, oh, I'm going up against Antonio today, so I got to bring it. Or it's like Tom Cruise going like, Brad is getting a lot of nice camera angles. I mean, I think without them being egotists, but I do think they are literally
they make each other better. Yeah,
at each other in a way that's like, damn, it is an all-star team.
Yeah,
they also, just to that point, not it. Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt definitely shine in this area, but all of the characters have such good chemistry with each other in insane ways that is especially good for the romance angle of this novel, is that there is all of this depth of emotion between every single person on screen.
Right.
Time.
Yeah,
and it just
it's
makes
like
for that overwhelming, like,
Lestat turns Louis, and there's a love story there, but Armand is the true love of Louis, waiting in the shadows and all that sort of thing. But Claudia's also there, and are they parental, or is there love there? And then she's the tragic one that can't grow older, and yet she does.
The ultimate tragedy of the romance is that it ends with Louis deciding to be alone, of course, too, right? That it's sort of this yeah, I know, right? Before we dive into the movie, as we always do, I do want to talk about the poster, because I think I remember this poster being around. I remember going to the theater as a kid and seeing this up. I did see this movie young as well, because Tom Cruise fan. Once again, it was just like, and I was kind of bored by it as a kid, except for the parts where some
literally were trapped on the highway to the danger zone.
Well, I will say, and
there was no turn off for you. You were just on that highway.
Summer of 1996. I'm 7 years old. I go see Mission Impossible. And that guy has been my hero ever since on screen. Like, just I just fell in love with this. Like, my screen idol was there, and it's never changed in all those years. No matter how.
Same with me and Jim Belushi. I cannot miss it.
I came out of a screening of K9, and I said, "That's the guy right there."
I saw Real Men in the theater.
Oh
with
my
Jim
God,
Belushi
Real Men
and John Ritter.
Yeah. Oh my God. But yeah,
I saw The Stupids, and I said, "That's
ooh,
no, that's Tom Arnold." Sorry,
yeah.
I jumped it. Yeah. Tom Arnold, Jim Belushi.
You
put those two together?
I saw True
that
Lies.
would be the best
Oh my God,
actor.
it's just two beer-bellied guys
my
going,
God.
"Hey, doing?"
Yeah,
that's too much.
The juxtaposition between Belushi and Cruise is
Why did we ever get that pairing?
I see that on a poster. I'm going
that
Belushi, Cruise, and they would do it alphabetically.
I know. I like the idea that Belushi gets the billing before Cruise in that world. But yeah, talk about the billing here is Tom Cruise, and what? Almost half of the poster is Tom Cruise's face.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting that we're talking about Brad Pitt as a movie star, but it's interesting that it's not paired as a two-hander yet. It still speaks to...
Well, Pitt is still pretty early. I mean, this is very early. I mean, it was like Thelma and Louise launches them pretty much. Everyone's like going, damn, take your shirt off again.
But yeah, that was pure hunkitude for him, right?
Yeah, like, pure hunk. But also, everyone was like, he's a smoldering young actor.
He is, but I think it's, it's because what is
but Tom Cruise is the superstar that sells this movie.
Oh, yeah.
And two, I have to think that they responded the same way we did, which is to say it's wild that he is not the main character of this movie, because he's the most charismatic person on any given screen that he is on.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and also I think we're also responding to the fact that the popularity of the books at this point is the character of Lestat, so he is playing the iconic character from the material. It is sort of,
even Anne Rice. I mean, that's the reason the second novel's Lestat is by the time she finished that first one, from what I understand, she was a little bored with Louis. And Louis comes back. I mean, Armand gets his own novels and whatever, and they're all around.
But Louis has such an arc in this first story, right? It is sort of like it's almost like after Interview with the Vampire, what more is there to do with him? And I know I did Wikipedia the books. I will say just out of curiosity. I was curious what these books were even and where they went. And so I know eventually you get into Louis and witches and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It all gets kind of muddy after Queen of the Damned.
Yeah, it does seem like there's kind of a trilogy, and then it seems like she kept trying to stop writing them, is what I could see in the Wikipedia, where she'd be like, "This is the last one." No, then there's more. Then that's the last one.
Well, it's the Arthur Conan Doyle curse, where it's like
the mummy
I can't
stuff,
stop because people will not let me stop.
The Jesus stuff didn't quite take off. The mummy stuff didn't quite take off.
She did a werewolf book too. I think only one. She did a werewolf book.
It is sort of like with Anne. I mean, I feel like it's only recently I knew Anne Rice wrote any. I remember when the Jesus book came out because there was a lot of press about it.
She famously fell back in love with her faith and decided she was just going to devote her talents to Christianity. Then she had an equally famous falling out, not with her faith specifically, but with the Catholic Church, which is what she was brought up in.
I wonder why.
And man,
there's
some of those books that we got at Powell's that were from her private library that were Catholic books on Catholic church history. Oh, reading what she wrote in the margins about the Catholic Church is unbelievable. That stuff was scathing. Anyway,
I do want to point out
I would pay any amount of money for Anne Rice's writings on the Catholic Church.
I think they pretty much sold all of those books at this point. We had special stickers made up from the private library of Anne Rice, and we put them on the books there.
That's awesome.
Anyway,
I will just say, talking about Pitt there for a second, we talked about he had done Thelma and Louise in 91, A River Runs Through It in 92, California in 93, but this same year, 1994, he does Interview with the Vampire and Legends of the Fall. Oh,
Legends of the Fall, that's another one.
Peak hunk Brad Pitt. In fact, I was thinking about, is this perhaps the hunkiest cast assembled for a film? Because
it's a pretty hunky cast.
Because not only do we have Pitt and Cruise and Banderas, but lest we forget
Stephen Ray.
Stephen Ray. I was gonna say, lest we forget, this is still pretty hot Christian Slater territory too.
Yeah. Though his outfit, I mean, I wore basically the same clothes at the same time, but that outfit is so 94.
Yeah,
he's got like the jersey tee with the vest over it. He's got the baggy jeans that are rolled. He's actually got the cuffs. I was like, Jesus Christ, that was me in 94. Only I didn't look like that. But I
Christian Slater filling in for the departed River Phoenix, who was supposed to play this part.
And that would have been
they cast
also
River
extremely
Phoenix.
hunky. That would have been crazy hunky as well.
That is a trivia fact that I did not know.
Yeah, it was,
and is rocking my world.
But
right
now.
But
still on that hunky path, no question about it. I
think Slater did a great job.
Slater's
when
great.
You think about what River Phoenix might have done with it,
River Phoenix
both look so young. That's another thing. It's why is this interviewer so young
that's what's
and
interesting now that they're doing the TV show and they have Eric Bogosian playing the interviewer.
Yeah, and in the book, he is referred to the character of David Malloy, who does not get a name until until Vampire Lestat. Is simply referred to as the boy and is very intentionally supposed to be a young man.
Interesting. Well, I guess that makes sense.
In other words,
talk about
he's a twink.
He is
a twink.
When you talk about him and his sort of the lust after the vampire lifestyle would be that of a younger person who might want to stay young.
Yeah, that's true.
As opposed to, I'm 65, keep me at this age.
And in fact, he does spend the next 3 novels following any vampire he can find, saying, please make me a vampire.
Yeah, I know that he continues through the series. It's kind of funny.
Which is well set up.
I don't know if you happen to read my book or not, but I really like the whole vampire thing.
But I think that's
where are you going? Come back.
That's well set up by the Slater performance at the end of this, where he is getting desperate and going like, "No, babe, I want." I will say, I
really like Brad Pitt as Louis. Like, I thought you'd be different. I mean, that is good. Where he's like going, "Oh no, you took the wrong lesson from all the stuff I was just telling you."
One of the best Pitt line deliveries is, "I've failed again."
I failed again. Yeah,
where you just go like, "It's great." I will say. I've always really liked Christian Slater as well, and this piece of trivia makes me like him even more. he donated his entire salary from this movie to River Phoenix's charity.
Oh wow, that is great.
Good dude, man. I've heard a lot of good things about Slater.
I've
People seem
heard
to like that
some
guy.
other things about him too, about drunken fights with girlfriends, and
Well,
he's had his troubles.
He's had his
troubles.
all right. I just
But you know what? This
here-
isn't gossip.
This
corner.
is Brendan here to bounce. Now I will say, just since we're talking about casting, that when Anne Rice wrote the novel, she had pictured Rutger Hauer as Lestat.
I
Now,
mean,
keep in
if
mind,
you're picturing
young
1975
Rutger Hauer, yeah.
Rutger Hauer, fuck yeah.
I could.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about it even a little bit further, but like, if you had Blade Runner era Rutger Hauer as Lestat, hell yeah. I mean, he has some of that quality in that movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do think that's interesting.
I actually think that Sting, when he wrote Moon Over Bourbon Street, which is on his first solo album, which is pre this movie, so it's in the 80s. It's, of course, based on Interview with the Vampire. I honestly think he wrote that song as like a pitch for like, hey, could I perhaps
Ask
play
me.
Lestat? Hello. And then, of course, visually, they based John Constantine on Sting. So in a weird way, he's ended up in the supernatural realm.
And it's,
But I
it's-
think 80s Sting was sitting there going, I could totally play Lestat. Please,
yeah.
let me play Lestat.
Well, and we already saw Sting play Dr. Frankenstein in The Bride, and we weren't.
oh boy,
we weren't too impressed.
we were not. Olivia, have you ever seen The Bride?
I have not.
No,
Don't.
You know why?
Don't.
'Cause it's a movie that, for all intents and purposes, doesn't exist. Brendan, it's totally forgotten by time. It
has a very pretty young Sting and a very beautiful young Jennifer Beals, and it is one of the most boring films you'll
Oh
ever
my
see.
god!
Oh.
Except for the
Clancy
MVP,
Brown.
Hi, Cat. Except for Clancy Brown as the Frankenstein monster. He heard about The Bride and he had to come over. He's a fan.
Columbo's cracking me up. Like, hey, wait, hey.
All right, what do you got something to say, buddy? No. He's very shy. But
That's all right.
no, yeah, that movie is extremely boring. It's for those who don't, you can go back into our archives. It's a 1980s reimagining of The Bride of Frankenstein, but if it was super
it's
boring.
awful.
I
if it
will
was
say,
super
I'm just looking through here, the amount of people, I didn't know this actually until that Daniel Day-Lewis was straight up cast as Lestat at one point.
Ooh. I mean,
I thank
blonde.
God,
You'd have to make him blonde.
but thank God that didn't happen, or else he would have been really drinking people's blood. Probably.
Yeah,
I mean, he would have
I almost
committed.
feel like he would have taken that role too seriously.
Yeah,
in
yeah.
way that
In a
Tom
weird
Cruise-
way, I agree. I mean, because Tom Cruise is doing the walk of, I am an intelligent being and I'm also dangerous, but the weird lightness and charisma that he's bringing to it, I have never seen Daniel Day-Lewis in any of his performance be electrifyingly charismatic. Now, powerful, yes, but a different thing. I've never seen him be a lighthearted, quipster. Has he ever been a quipster?
The only thing I can think of that is remotely similar to Lestat is Bill the Butcher in Gangs of New York.
Yeah, but
But
no,
it's
that's
different energy.
power. Again, it's a power
But
thing. It's not about.
It's the only character I can think of, though, who kind of revels in their own dangerous nature. But yeah,
That's
I
true.
agree. It's still not exactly on them, but it's the only guy who has some sense of fun to him.
It is. You're right. It is that power thing. Is that Lestat is also like at turns kind of a pathetic. He's
Yeah.
like,
I
he's
mean, he turns
empty.
Louis because he's lonely
Yeah.
I mean, I think one of the things that just
and he's hot. I mean, it's
and
just
he's-
like
yeah.
I'm
and when-
lonely
I
and
mean,
he's
you
hot.
look at other people that were considered for it. John Malkovich. No, because but the thing with Malkovich is, yeah, you just go like evil vampire. You're like, yeah, but that he's just a baddie at that point, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's
Well, this is post Dangerous
Dangerous Liaisons, and I totally see that. Peter
and
Peter
coming
Weller,
off that, a period piece where he is seductive and weirdly for John Malkovich, sexy.
but still but conniving, right? You know, I mean, like
Yes.
there's still
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
I think the casting here works.
Peter Weller, who we love, apparently was up
Oh,
for it.
Peter Weller, God.
I mean, but once
great
again,
actor.
maybe too serious. Alexander Gutenov, I see visually
Oh, you
long
kidding
blonde
me?
hair, but no, visually I see that, but
Sure,
the
visually, but
performance though, no. Yeah, and the weirdest one I have to say is Anne Rice did take a meeting with Tom Hanks for the part of Lestat.
Oh,
No,
can you imagine that lunch?
How you doing?
there's
It just, yeah, just I mean,
Within 5 minutes, she's sitting there going, "I hear the shrimp po' boys
Yeah.
are good."
yeah.
I mean, I'm sure it was
it's-
like, let's talk about anything
It's
else.
so
This is not
interesting
gonna work.
because this same year he does Forrest Gump, which is about a million miles away from this, and like, good, yeah, that there you go, Tom.
that
Go
was
do
the
that.
right casting choice
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah.
Thank
Go
your
over
agent,
there.
thank your
Yeah.
manager.
Yeah,
Like,
whoever, but I mean that screams of well, who's big, right? Like that.
No,
Tom Hanks does
that
scream
is
of,
literally
let's
Warner
just
Brothers,
go
which
to-
always does that to this
well,
day.
Warner Brothers cast him in Bonfire of the Vanities. That would have been
I know.
that again.
I know.
So anyway,
can you imagine a more sexless Lestat? I cannot.
yeah, I mean, you talk about, I mean, basically an asexual screen presence, Tom Hanks,
Yeah.
isn't he? I can't
Any
think-
film
It's
where
all
he's
chaste
had
romance.
like a passionate kiss seems weird.
although
And
weirdly-
Lord knows he hasn't had like. Well,
Although
has he had a
weirdly-
sex scene ever?
I can't think of one.
He
I
wakes
al-
up
although
in bed next to people all the
I
time
will
in movies,
say-
but
I
no,
will
we never
say,
see anything
though,
going on.
there was some heat between him and Antonio Banderas in Philadelphia that they could have carried into this.
That's
well, I guess,
true.
No,
Well,
but he
I
wouldn't
mean,
have
that
been Louis,
was
though, would he? He would have been Lestat, so it doesn't. it
Sweet
wouldn't have
and
mattered.
tragic. Sweet and tragic.
And that's always, it's always chaste, cute. He and Meg Ryan give a peck to each other in something,
Yeah.
you know, you can't, they're cute together, but you can't actually imagine them having sex.
No one wants, except for perhaps his wife.
Yeah.
No
Well,
one wants
yeah.
to have sex with Tom Hanks. They just want him
Yeah.
to be the husband, boyfriend, or best friend.
You put
That's
him in
it.
a sweater
Tom
and
Hanks,
khakis.
we're sorry.
No,
I'd
we
like to
love Tom
apologize
Hanks.
to
We love Tom Hanks, but the image of America's dad is
Yeah,
right. I think we
no,
all have
yeah.
this like.
Oh, that's not meant to be an insult. Weirdly, I
love
just think
the
that
man.
people. I mean, just like no one wants to. You know, if I became a big movie star, no one's going like, "Ooh, put his poster on the wall."
right.
It would be a whole thing. He has presented himself in a way
Yeah.
that is so
and
likable,
es-
but it's on a different level. It's
especially-
not about.
especially at this time,
Yeah.
Tom Cruise is a magazine idol, right? I mean, he
Yeah,
is
yeah, absolutely.
people's sexiest man alive kind of stuff, right? Like that's this
Wait, are we
time.
still talking about me, or I
So,
got confused?
Sorry, back to the poster just briefly because I do want to cover that.
Yeah,
if
we should
do.
probably talk about the movie.
We should talk about the movie. We should get into the movie here, but yeah, and I mean it. I do think that the poster does create this like. It's not going for the horror vibe that so many of our schlockier posters have gone for. It is, and it's interesting that when I went to this in my iTunes, this was in the drama. I went to the horror section for it, and not there. It was in the drama section, and I'm going, oh yeah, I guess it is. Except for, it is kind of spooky. Like it is kind of scary in a way. I think maybe because it's not trying to scare you, I actually think the jump scares and stuff work better in this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
So anyway, but and even the tagline here is "Drink from me and live forever."
Yeah, that's hot.
It is. It's there's an eroticism to it, and it speaks to this idea that we're talking about the eternal nature of vampires in this. We are not immediately talking about the horror of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but again, this is also them leaning into the massive following these books already have.
Yes.
It's their way of reassuring the fans that already exist. Don't worry, we haven't forgot about the sexy romance of it. It is not going to be just Tom Cruise killing people, though he certainly does kill a lot of people in it.
I mean, that would be me going, oh, yeah, Tom Cruise is going to kill a bunch of people in this movie. This is an interesting thing, though, in that sense that, yes, Lestat is complex, but this is one of the very few, in fact, maybe only one of two villainous performances from Tom Cruise.
He's another one that you don't often see in that role.
It's this
and I think
Collateral.
he enjoys, just like he did probably when he, what was the one where he was the hitman?
Collateral, which is
And
one of his best performances.
He's great, and he's totally chilling. You know, these good guys love when they get to play a bad guy occasionally.
You get that sense.
He so clearly loves it when,
I mean, this feels like one of the most free and unhinged Cruise performances.
Yeah,
Like, you're just
agreed.
Like, wow, I mean, he always has energy, certainly, in his movies. He's always a hyperactive actor, but here you're just like, oh, you can almost feel him reveling in every line, which so works for Lestat, who is reveling in his life as a vampire, right? Like, in this power he has over people. So let's get into the movie itself. Finally,
What movie are we talking about today?
oh, yeah,
It's been so long.
It's something about vampires.
Okay.
We do start. I mean, the movie opens up with our titular interview beginning here, where Christian Slater has brought Brad Pitt to this hotel room, or has Brad Pitt brought him here? I can't.
Brad Pitt has brought him
Yeah,
here.
sorry, Louis.
Or he has followed him there, and it's not a hotel, it's an empty room in San Francisco. And that is specifically, I could, just because I lived there for a little bit, I'm like, oh my God, I know that building. And that's in the Tenderloin. I was like, oh, nice. I like the whole sweeping into nighttime San Francisco. Again, right off the bat, even from the first few shots, you're like, oh, Neil Jordan, you're a real director.
Well,
and again, what a delight to watch a real film. It's just been a while.
I know. Well, we watched Subspecies 2 last week.
Subspecies 2, Bloodstone is what we watched last week. This is just a treat.
As we
Maybe
mentioned,
that's why I'm coming in this hot.
Well,
but I really enjoyed myself.
Yeah. I mean, there is always a treat when we can watch something with real actors made by a real. And that's the other thing too. The choice of Neil Jordan, I think, is also interesting because it's not a horror guy. It's not even a studio guy. It's a real Oscar-nominated, prestige, respected director.
Yeah,
it's a Crying Game, right?
Yeah. Well, that's what Stephen Ray obviously is a regular of his movies.
But I mean, is this the one he did immediately after? Because I think that he wouldn't have been picked for this if he hadn't already had the buzz from Crying Game.
He also did Mona Lisa, which I love.
Mona Lisa's great.
Yeah, he had done Crying Game and then this, exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And he follows this up with Michael Collins, another big history film, sweeping. So he brings him here and he tells Christian Slater, I know everybody's name, but what is it? Was it David something? Is it David?
He's never named in the movie, so he can just be Christian
Then
Slater.
he is Christian Slater. Yeah.
Christian Slater.
Yeah, Christian Slater, he tells him he's a Louis says he's a vampire, and Slater's like, okay, yeah, sure, whatever, pal. And then I did think the movie does a lot of cool, like, subtle vampire stuff, which I like. There's not a lot of over-the-top vampire powers.
Until we get to Europe.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
In rewatching this, the first moment that I'm struck by is the reveal of his face in the light.
Yeah.
In this, and props to Sam Winston who did all of the vampire makeup effects.
Great work. Great work for not going over the top too.
Yeah.
And it was the perfect balance between they are horrifying to look at and still deeply sexy looking.
Yeah.
It balances that exact kind of
Yeah,
feeling
he's
of these
porcelain,
books.
but you see the veins. And so it's another thing where it's like, I mean, he's got that bone structure, he's got the Brad Pitt thing going on, but it is this thing of like, oh, your eyes are gorgeous, but they shouldn't mildly glow.
Yeah.
It's like your skin is perfect, but I shouldn't be seeing all those veins.
Especially
like,
for this world where vampires
enticing look.
Where vampires walk among us, right? So they are odd, but they could blend into a crowd. You know what I mean? Like it's not not so that I don't know if you guys saw this in any trivia, but the makeup approach to this where they had the actors hang upside down for a half hour so that
the veins
would fill in, and then they traced all the veins in and painted from there.
Oh, that's
like, that is cool. And that's the kind of thing where when you think Stan Winston, you think big creatures. So seeing him do this kind of subtle work, and I was bummed when I saw he was not nominated for makeup for this because I think the makeup is fantastic.
It is. What was up? What was this year? There has to have been something big because this deserved it, definitely.
Yeah, no, this was nominated, I think, for 2 Oscars, and I don't think, if I looked correctly here.
No, I mean, what were the other competers for makeup?
Well, I'll have to look that up, Brendan.
Okay.
I'll get.
Don't you just know offhand?
I'll get back to you in a second.
Okay, Mister. Let's play the Google music.
Yeah.
We don't have any
Googling. He's Googling that info.
But I agree. It's a great and very well thought out. But I will say also, this is all based on my memory of reading the book a million years ago, but it is true to what she describes. So again, it's like Stan Winston going, well, I know what traditional vampire stuff is, but let me try to get as close to and as subtle as what she put in the books. And they are walking corpses, but they are almost statue-like gorgeous.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
But of course, in this world, we don't see except for when we go to the Circus of the Vampires, we don't see too many vampires who aren't attractive people anyway.
No.
I mean, if they ran into like some fat slob vampires, like going,
"Hey,
look, I didn't ask to be a vampire, but here I am. I know I'm gorgeous. I know it's hard to turn away, but
the winner for the 1994 Academy Awards was Rick Baker for Ed Wood.
Which, based on him turning Martin Landau into Bela Lugosi, that is an amazing
And
makeup.
then also nominated Forrest Gump, the aforementioned Forrest Gump, and future, I think coming up in 2 weeks maybe, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Oh, okay. Boy, it's been a million years since I've seen that. Anyway.
Makeup work is impressive, but also only 3 nominees that year, so that's interesting too.
Well, this certainly did deserve to be in that category because it is really good job.
Yeah. It was nominated for a couple things, but not that.
So basically, the interviewer doesn't believe him until he does a really fast turn out of the lights.
Yeah. I like this though. The perception of it from the human perspective is all of a sudden the vampires here, and here,
And he goes, how the hell did you do that? He goes, same way you do it. I walked over, I flipped the switch. The only problem is I move at a rate you can't track with your eyes.
Yeah, it's almost like teleporting from our perspective.
By the way, I mean, this is the comic book nerd in me, and John, you'll understand. Later on in this world, in the Anne Rice vampire world, and Olivia, since you've read all the books, maybe you can help me out. It's like some of us have powers, or we all have different gifts. Like Lestat can read minds. Louis can't. What can Louis do? What's his? Is it just his guilt, his soul? That's his thing?
Oh, man. Bummer.
Yeah,
Bummer on the powers, buddy.
Yeah, pretty lame powers. I'm sorry, you're going to be in the Legion of Substitute Heroes.
Well, I just love the idea of my power. I feel bad about all the stuff we do.
And Stephen Ray can levitate and float.
It also is mentioned by Tom Cruise that stuff does come with age.
Oh, the older you get, you develop more
there's the
vampire
whole thing
skill.
When they go into the theater de vampire, when they get into the lair and stuff, there is a warning that most of them can read minds, right? There's a whole thing about they can know what you're thinking, like collectively. I gotta say again,
yes, I agree with you, John. We're gonna get there, but by that point, I was also a little like, right, this is the slow section, and it's Louis and Claudia and their tragic little thing, and Lestat is out of the picture. But the second they get to Europe, and I'm like, yes, the theater.
I mean,
love the theater of the vampires.
You talk about the comic book nerd in us, and I am going like, lair of vampires. Now,
and when you have Steve Marie go, who is Lestat? It's like we were just hearing his voiceover, his thoughts, and then suddenly Seymour's like, who's this Lestat guy you're thinking about? Yeah. Oh, I love a psychic. So I love a Professor Xavier throwdown.
So
anyway,
he starts telling his story where he is. This is 1791, is that right? They say
1791,
and he's a plantation master, which immediately makes you go, ooh.
It's one of the things that
it was a job back then.
It is one of the things that I am very intrigued about in the show is that an actor of color is playing Louis, and so they are changing some of this
ish because well, it's true, but he does say he is Cajun, and even back then there were. I won't use any of the terms of the day because they're horrible, but there were people of mixed race back then that could be masters of the house. Outside of New Orleans, that would not be happening. In Mississippi, that would not be happening. But there, yes, Cajun, Creole, that's a big mix of culture. So I don't think it's too far off. But they both look very handsome. I've seen the trailer, and I'm like going, they found another good-looking couple of guys.
Yeah.
Not as long-haired. Yeah, they don't have the long 90s hair. I love that it's all like
they've eliminated all of that from the show apparently, as I'm looking at it here.
so no longer a plantation.
Yeah.
No,
owner.
he's a wealthy guy in New Orleans, but not a plantation owner.
Well, that's fine.
What I was gonna say is like I think that they did get rid of that too.
Yeah.
Deeply like I appreciate it. It's definitely an of the time, but it was very cringy.
She was using, of course. She was using the history of the day and going, I want to deal with an aristocrat, and Lestat would only go for an aristocrat.
Oh, and apparently
the aristocrats of the time, this is what they did.
The show kind of reverses it now, where he experiences the racism of being a black man in high society. There's a lot more queer representation and stuff like that just certainly wouldn't have been around when the book.
Well, I remember the controversy when the movie came out with and people were not only thrown by Tom Cruise, fans of the books said they have skirted a lot of the gay romance, and then people who just wanted to go see a vampire movie, it's like they couldn't win. The people who were just like, I want to go see a Tom Cruise vampire movie, like, I don't want no guys looking longingly into each other's eyes and having orgasmic moans when they bite each other on the neck.
And you know what's wild about this movie and experiencing them back to back is that the book is somehow more and less homoerotic than
really?
The movie is.
It's been a long time since I've read it.
But
there is. And again, I think that has to do with a lot of the chemistry between the actors as opposed to the writing of the script, is that there is a lot of tension in moments that in the book I was just like,
yes, and
this could have been way sexier. Come on.
She wrote it in the mid-70s. She's probably going, I do want this to be published.
It's true.
In her mind, they're doing all kinds of stuff.
The movie does present I kind of like the tone the movie strikes, and if they want to get more explicit with that in the show, I think for a 2022 thing, it's necessary. Number one,
sure, absolutely,
and I think bring that out. But for a 1994 movie, I kind of like the attitude this takes. It is clearly a romantic relationship, if not overtly sexual, both between Louis and Lestat and Louis and Armand. But there is love there, romantic love.
Yeah.
And
I also like how matter of fact things are presented, which actually, without it having to be explicit, it's just there because in Louis' monologue, once they're like a vampire duo, and he just says like, me, I tried not to kill anybody. Lestat liked, at the early part of the evening, he liked a beautiful young woman. Then later in the evening, a gilded young man. And he's just saying it like, yeah, this is just what he liked. They're basically predators, again, that as far as sexual taste, it's the same as a gourmand. It's like everything is game. We are after any of it. As far as relationships are concerned, they go for an emotional core, which I do like.
Honestly, that does play into a lot of the romance sensibilities of, any romance connoisseur will say like, hey, the best part of the romance novels is the part before they've gotten is the non-explicit part of the book.
It's about how they come together on an emotional level instead of like, now they're boning. It's like, well, how did they get to the boning? Let's explore that.
This movie plays in the eroticism of the vampire, not the explicit sexuality. We never see vampires having sex. It's all about the biting, the feeding, the drinking.
Yeah.
And in fact, in Anne Rice's universe, they cannot.
Oh, well, that makes sense then. This is a little bit different than your True Bloods.
It's a little different from your True Bloods. Stucky Stockhouse.
Well, I feel like there's a Venn diagram there where, like, to another generation, the True Blood stuff is.
True Blood is clearly. I mean, that's
woman, more like dripping.
What was her name?
Southern.
Can't remember her name.
Charlene Harris.
Charlene Harris. Yeah, she clearly was a devotee of Anne Rice, but she wanted to spin it into a more of a sexy, even more Southern thing and a more modern. And that worked.
That
he was
is
throwing
dripping.
werewolves and werepanthers and fairies and all that. And you're like, okay, you do you, girl. You do you. And then you got the Linda K. Hamilton stuff with the was it the vampire hunter lady? Anita Blake.
Anita
There we
Blake.
go.
Yeah. Once again,
This
I read
is
some of
all my bookstore knowledge coming back.
Some of the comics.
I've looked at a lot of Dust Jackets.
I read some of the
I have
Anita
not
Blake.
read any of these books.
Marvel did some of the adaptations of Anita
That's
Blake.
right. They turned it into graphic novels.
I did read some of those comics. Boy, I'm coming off as a real illiterate guy on this show. Are there pictures in it? Then I can like it. But
I used to have the Viewmaster reel of what was it? It was that book with the thing.
Yeah. So he's telling his origin and his I mean, boy, Louis is just, even before the vampirism, it's all tragedy with this guy. He lost his wife in childbirth, or he lost his wife and his child, and now he's not like gonna actually kill himself, but he's looking to die. I do like the scene where he just accuses a guy, or he just gets a guy to accuse him of cheating, and he just like, go ahead and fucking shoot me. Just
he opens his coat,
buddy.
He opens his shirt, like, go ahead, you're gonna shoot me, do it.
This is what,
which is the one shot of Brad Pitt's admittedly very hunky chest.
Yeah.
Well,
the whole movie.
I was not tracking it, but
I was tracking for you. That's why I'm here.
It is interesting to have.
I guess you're right. There's really not much bare chestedness in this.
No, and it's interesting. I know both Pitt and Cruise very much were kind of not wanting to be slabs of meat. Like they, I mean, on Top Gun, the first Top Gun, it was Cruise said no promotional photos of me with my shirt off. You can't promote this movie that way. And I think Pitt has had a similar thing where it's like, especially the way Pitt starts with Thelma and Louise, which is a good performance, but he is very, objectified in it. Purposefully, and it works in that movie. But I think both of them have been very conscious about, we are actors. We don't want to be sold as hunks.
Yeah.
And they both, to a certain degree, were anyway, and have had to kind of work to get them. Pitt more than Brad has had to work to get himself out of.
And it's the interesting
thing.
I
think they had their cake and ate it too.
Yeah.
As in, their acting has always been rightfully acclaimed, but they certainly showed up on FHM magazine covers and GQ and wet T-shirts and stuff. They've done all that stuff.
Well, and I think
and you're like, okay, all right.
It's interesting now they've kind of leaned back into it, because now it's like, we're older guys, and it is. I mean, like, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, one of the most talked about scenes is where Pitt's taking his shirt off. Cruise is playing shirtless football in the new Top Gun movie, going like, check it out, I'm 60 and these abs are banging.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there is a part of that now.
As he was famously quoted as saying.
Yeah. But I think now it's an interesting thing where it's like, we are still vital. And I mean, Jesus Christ, they put in the work. Holy God, I'll never come close to being as in shape as those 60-year-old men.
Listen, all of Top Gun 2 was Tom Cruise saying, "Look, I'm still vital."
That's the
whole movie.
The whole plot of the movie is, this old dude is still better than fucking anybody out there.
This guy fucks.
Yeah.
This guy, again, he has actually built a home in the middle of the highway to the danger zone.
Yeah.
He is never leaving that home.
And
he is there.
It's interesting to see his career as a whole separate discussion, but it is like the Mission Impossible movies. I jokingly said that, but building the church around Ethan Hunt, he is portrayed as a supernatural force. I mean, in one of my favorite lines in any of the movies is Rogue Nation, where Alec Baldwin calls him the living manifestation of destiny. Where you're like, I mean, so it is this. Tom Cruise has ascended humanity at this point. It almost feels like.
All right.
What I'm saying
Mr.
is,
Hubbard, it's okay. It's all right.
But I'm saying in the characters he plays are these larger than life mythic heroes almost. So it's interesting to go back to a time. I can't imagine him making a movie like this today with the way his career is going. I don't know, because he will surprise you sometimes and do like a Tropic Thunder. But, I mean, there's still that part of him. But it is interesting to look back. And this is a time when he was really proving, I'm an actor.
Yeah. I mean, Magnolia is coming along, and that's another thing.
Maybe his best performance in any movie. He's
unbelievable,
incredible in that movie. So we see Lestat kind of following Louis with like a what's this guy's deal?
Yeah.
And he saves him from being mugged, and then we get the scene I always remember from this movie, which is the him first biting Brad Pitt, and they're floating in the air above the ship. It's a great, you talk about just and also once again 1700s New Orleans, the ships and it's just gorgeous. And Neil Jordan,
they spent the money, man, everything in this. And then when we move up through the decades, I know to a lot of eyes it's like, oh, it's just 18 blah blah blah, but when they keep jumping up, and they do of course have Louis saying what dates they're in, but I just sit there going, costume designers, all you guys, and you guys are knocking it out of the fucking park. Where I'm like going, I can tell we have moved from 1790, now we're in 1820 or whatever it is. I'm like going, I do love this shit as like history buff as well. I'm like,
this is an interesting.
Also, I want to dress like them a lot of the time.
This is an interesting comparison to when we had our famous epic length conversation about Bram Stoker's Dracula, where you were disappointed it didn't lean into legitimate history stuff. And I adore how weird and gothic
and
that
stylized.
movie is. That is still I still think that's the best vampire movie, but that's my opinion. I love that movie. But
it's a great Dracula movie, but I got my problems.
I know.
This is
believe
the
me,
closest we get.
There's about 5 hours of material you can listen to in this feed.
Oh, dear Lord.
That we'll get into.
Yeah, it's a divisive one. I am far too protective of the character Dracula to admit that.
I do think there is probably a part of that works for you specifically in this movie, and you don't have a protective nature towards Lestat and Louis.
But do I love the fucking when they get to Europe? And we're right around the 1920s era, and they're wearing their fucking opera cloaks for half a second. Louis in a tux and an opera cloak, and then Stephen Ray shows up in an opera cloak, and I'm like, dueling vampires! Oh, what? Actually, it's actually a Marx Brothers routine. I'm like, oh, they're doing the mirror routine. Cool. This is great. There's Harpo, and I love it.
Olivia, did you see the movie before you read the book?
Who, me?
No, I said Olivia.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so I think that's an interesting thing where, sort of the opposite of these fans. In your mind, the idea of Tom Cruise as Lestat and stuff like that makes complete sense.
Yeah. Yes, and like I have my own, feelings that I've adopted since reading the book. But yeah, to me, they were very definitive in my. Kind of how I saw those characters. It is
interesting when you come from that direction, where it's like you'll start reading the book and you're going to see those actors as the characters as you're reading them.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about once again the inherent sort of romanticism or even implied sexuality of the Louis and Lestat relationship is when he comes to him again. He comes to him in his bedroom when he's laying in his bed, and here comes Lestat, and there's no. They don't call it out, but there is just kind of like, there is the classic, what we think of as Dracula entering Lucy's bedroom. Here is Lestat and Louis, and it's, the movie. And
he's being his sire. So he's like going, you're dying. And this is what we all go through. It's going to suck. And then it's going to be awesome.
There is just this like beautiful play throughout the whole first half of the movie of Louis being like, and this is in the book too, Louis being like, life is precious. This is a poignant moment for me. And Lestat just being like, no.
Yeah, it's like, this was my last sunrise. And you're like going, and Lestat's like, I don't even fucking give a shit. Yeah. And it's like, I can see things and hear things and is like, yeah, isn't that cool? Anyway, let's go on. Let's go kill some people.
In the way we talk about these vampire movies a lot, the kind of real life parallels you can draw, there's always the addiction metaphor and stuff like that. But there is kind of this attitude of Lestat being the hedonist guy going, dude, life is just about the party, man. Like, stop being so serious.
Another direct quote from the film, and that did take me out. Life is just a party, man.
And not being familiar with the mythology of these characters, the quote that comes back again and again is Lestat saying, "I am going to give you the choice I never had." So I'm assuming that Lestat's origin is a big part of the
his sire turns him into a vampire and then immediately self-immolates.
Oh wow!
So that's a little tragic backstory for Lestat.
So that would show why
tragic backstory I'm throwing in for you.
Yeah, that's a little. Once again, this frequent.
Actually,
Dennis
I didn't know that.
Miller
I mean, because I don't remember Vampire Lestat.
But that then speaks to why he's like, and I am going to guide you through this. I'm going to be the mentor I never had. And once again, through this relationship they have, there is a romanticism, at least, to we are going to be life partners, right? We are going to be together for eternity, even if that isn't sexual. And as you're saying, it actually makes sense. This movie never expressly says they can't have sex, right? That's from the book.
No, the movie
but
doesn't.
They just don't. But there is a sexuality to what they're. You get the sense they're their equivalent of sex when they're feeding on this lady here in a second, you know.
In the books, actually, Claudia asks Louis at one point what sex is like, because in the books their relationship does trend more husband-wife.
Yeah.
The movie allows it to, which is good.
No, I think the movie, once again, like a lot of things in the movie walks a really good line with that.
It does. I never feel like watching this. I never feel like they are avoiding something. They're just not getting explicit. So they're addressing everything and giving you these little droplets, and you go, that's enough. I see the thought. I don't need to have a lecture on it.
To having a classy, real deal, thoughtful filmmaker, once again, thinking about how these things. It also, and we'll get to her when we get to her. I mean, I like you guys were saying, the praise for Kirsten Dunst in this movie. She's always been an incredible actress. But she also reads to me as eternal. It doesn't read as, oh my God, it's Brad Pitt and a little girl. She embodies that.
Well, you see her do the jumps, and that's so well.
I have to imagine
so well delineated that as an actor, and especially an actor at that age, you're like, she goes in this movie from literally being a little girl, scared and then curious and I don't know and then being adorable, and then suddenly she's 30 years old as a vampire, and she's going, kind of wish I was like that lady up there. It's like I want to be her.
That stuff.
Like I'm never going to grow up, am I? I'm always going to be like this.
Another props to the costumers here is that they help delineate that so much with how she dresses. It's so stark. And watching it this most recent time, I was paying more attention because I was going to come here to talk, and just the final outfits that she is in are so. They're adults without being. I mean, they're not adults.
Well, there's like décolletage or whatever it is. It's sort of the lower neck, and she's also wearing colors later that a kid wouldn't.
Exactly.
Like she's in maroons and blood reds and black and all that stuff. A kid wouldn't.
There's
be
a
doing
maturity to it, not a sexualization.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
But my point that got us into this was that Claudia does ask Louis in the book what sex is like, because she is a little girl and has never had it, and he does bring up that it pales in comparison to the bite, and so for Louis and Lestat, and for, I guess, romantic vampires in general, that is the most intense experience that they can have, and so to share that, it does have this kind of
feels like it would have to be, right, in order to make, once again, the temptation, the appeal of becoming a vampire. Everything has to be better. Everything has to be grander and more pleasurable. There does have to be that sense to it. So that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, so we see I love the scene of Brad Pitt becoming a vampire when he talks about seeing the world with his vampire eyes, and him not even being able to describe it to Christian Slater, right? He goes, "It's the same but different. It's, the statues are alive but they're not," and stuff. And I do like that it's one of the few times Jordan does get subjective when that statue does turn and look at him.
Yeah. It's really, really well done. I thought, I will say that, is it Lestat who says a thing about you're looking at the world with vampire eyes? Whoever says the actual line about vampire eyes, I don't like that line. That line is so goofy. I mean, I know what they're getting at, but it's like, you're seeing it through vampire eyes. Now, bite with your vampire teeth. So I didn't like that line.
That is a direct book quote.
I'm sure it is. Dark Gift, I'm fine with Dark Gift. That's, I think, her invention was calling that the Dark Gift.
I really like that.
And now everyone uses that in vampire fiction. Yeah. She's a real trendsetter. I will say, like everything we ever watch that's vampire related or werewolf related or anything, I love and hate seeing the rules change. Like, here's Anne Rice's take. And the interviewer does. He goes, "So what about sunlight?" It's like, or does light bother you? He goes, "Actually, I quite like the light." It's like, yeah, but you can't walk out in it, and obviously he can't.
Crucifix,
but garlic, crucifix, no big deal. Stake through the heart was the one that got me, where he's like going, "No," and I'm like, "What?" A scythe cuts a dude in half and that killed him, but apparently a stake through the heart.
I think there's a decapitation aspect to it, right? That definitely seems like.
And then I love the whole thing about coffins. This is just Anne Rice, and I'm reading her mind. R.I.P. by the way, Anne Rice. But I think that she just loves that imagery, and that does seem very much a very New Orleans-y, gothy kind of thing of like satin coffin things. Because why would coffins be necessary? You can literally get in a box if you're a vampire, as long as you're not out in the fucking sun.
And I think that is true, that like gothic imagery is so, because so much of that purple prose that you hate is Anne Rice's love letter to New Orleans.
Well, I mean, absolutely. Like, and even in her later books that are taking place in the modern day, people are still wearing velvet coats and stuff. I mean, she just, that aesthetic. And I don't blame anyone who loves the aesthetic. Like I said, I would dress up like a Batman villain every day if I had the money for it.
Which one?
Well, I would be kind of jokery. I love tuxes and a brightly colored tuxedo. Are you kidding me? I'd be doing it every day. And probably holding up banks in Gotham. But anyway, so I get that's her aesthetic, but it's weird that in her universe, vampires must go to coffins.
So actually...
Okay, good. Oh, well, that's what Lestat said, so I'm just going with what he said.
Oh, I love it. I love someone actualing Brendan. It's my
no, that's great. She's pushing those glasses up.
So the coffin thing in the book, at least, is more of a practicality than having a person-sized box is much easier when it's a coffin. It's like transportable. Louis actually, his first night as a vampire, begs to sleep in the closet because he's so terrified of sleeping in a coffin. And Lestat
there
is like,
you go.
That's fucking stupid. Get in the coffin.
We get a little bit of that. I mean, we do get a little bit because the scene where he's putting him in the coffin, Lestat is like, it's going to be weird at first, but then is this going to be the best rest you ever get, though, or eventually?
Yeah.
It'll be as comfortable as anything. I did kind of take it in this that it is not... You have to do it, other than it's like everybody's doing it.
I mean, well, Louis says, the interviewer, at least in the movie, he does say coffins are a necessity.
Yeah, a necessity, which is different than I can't sleep, because they don't. This doesn't do the ground of the homeland and stuff like that we're used to.
And we do see that Lestat has apparently lasted years in the sewers of New Orleans without a coffin.
And we do get this awesome little scene later that I have always loved of Claudia tiptoeing out of the coffin.
I knew exactly which one you were talking about. I love that scene.
So cute and so sweet.
It's so cute and so sweet and also so grim because, again, it's like Yeah, that's just her life as a
I mean, that's the
vampire, and it's
whole-
like tiptoe around the
the whole thing
sunbeam.
with this movie that I
and then the
like.
way she goes out, of course,
Yeah,
it's like a heads up, and
especially.
you're like, ooh.
No, the whole movie.
All the fans in the theater groaning at that, just like, oh.
Why? Did she not go out that way in the book?
Oh no, she does. No, that's
but
what I
it-
mean.
oh,
During
I
during
see,
the
I see.
tiptoe scene, just going.
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
grim
of course,
nature
yeah.
of that is more of the like, oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was pretty sure she went out that way.
So yeah, let's talk
with
about
her new mommy.
the
Yes.
scene where they are feeding on this woman. I like Lestat's little razor blade fingernail.
Oh, it's
Yep.
so good.
Yeah.
When I was a teenager, I went through a goth phase, as so many people do, and
Yeah.
I wanted one of those
Yeah.
so bad.
Why
Like,
didn't you have one?
I-
Didn't they have them at Hot Topic
They did. I'm sure they did.
Yeah. Well, there's
or
something,
Spirit Halloween?
What's
store?
Yeah,
what's
probably
perfect
more like Spirit.
What's perfect about it as a Lestat weapon is it's dainty and vicious at the same time. It's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, you know,
It's
it's
so
And he's got the
perfectly
fangs to
ornate.
do the work, but
Yeah.
this is just a little thing of like, boom,
yeah.
gotcha. It's
and
awesome.
And it's also an extra little hedonism thing. You know, he likes
Mhm.
his shiny little bits and baubles.
Yeah,
it's
it's
The
sort
way
of
he
like-
plays with his prey is very, and it's a great delineation between him and Louis. Louis doesn't
Yeah.
come to kill people for a long time,
Yeah.
and even when he does kill people, he feels terrible about it, and he tries to only kill evil people and all that stuff. It's like, right, he's got a conscience
Well,
and a soul.
I like later
But
when
Lestat plays with him like the whole thing about, oh, tonight you're gonna sleep on satin, and you're like, right, you're gonna throw her in that coffin. It's like,
yeah,
Jesus.
the
He's like, oh, you've raised from the coffin. You're in heaven now. I mean, all that stuff is like, oh, you're mean.
the next scene where he has picked out prey for him, I do like this. Like, man, she fits your. Look at she fucking had her husband murdered. All right, that
Yeah.
old bitch has got it coming. Like that's
Yep.
the Lestat attitude here. He's like, I'll take care of the young guy who is the actual murderer.
Yeah.
And I don't
But
know
you
if any
take
that's
care of
true.
the old lady who set that up, and your conscience will be clean because she's an evil lady.
He's actually
and he
doing
still can't
what
do-
I have talked about on this show of if I became a vampire. And we've also talked about I'm much more on board to become a vampire than you, Brendan. In fact, after several of these movies, I've been like, I don't know, it kind of seems appealing in some of these things we see.
I
Louis
hate
would
to
be
admit,
so
I'm
disappointed in you, John.
I know.
I
He's
am a
failed.
Louis.
His story has failed me. But I
I'm a
did
Louis, man.
say
It's all about like I mean, yeah, living eternally, dressing like that, powers, but killing people.
But I
It's just
did
like,
say I think
killing
I would go down this route of vigilante vampire.
Okay.
Or same thing. Speaking of, we mentioned Innocent Blood earlier, but that attitude where she is killing mobsters and criminals
Yes.
and stuff like that. Because then
Yes.
it's like, all right, I can live with that. Where it's like I have to kill people. So might
You
as
heard
well
it here
kill the rest of
first. If
society.
there are a bunch of
Vampire
bloodless
slayings of-
criminals that start showing up in Portland,
Yeah.
we know who to look for.
Mm-hmm.
I know where he sleeps during the day. You
Also-
guys just call me.
Also, you talk about living like a Batman character. Just on rooftops and a cape and stuff like that too is also very appealing. But because I would full on deck out too in the anachronistic.
The best part about living in Portland is that you would fit in so well as a vampire.
Oh,
no
yeah,
one would
pretty
look
true.
twice
What a
at
city
you.
for it. Yeah, nobody would ever think for a second.
Yeah.
I see tons of people who probably are vampires on my day-to-day life. Yeah, and then I do love talk about once again how good Cruz is in this. His constant disappointment when he has to snap this woman's neck and stuff like that. He's just like,
Yeah.
God, what is wrong with you? Like it's just like I don't know what more do I have to do to get this through your head. I'm even playing by your weird
Well, Stop does
ethics here.
try. I mean, he
does.
does show him he can live off of animal blood and rats, and he's
Oh,
like,
I love that
only
scene.
it's gross,
That is one of
and
my
you
favorite
can
scenes.
survive off of it.
When he drains the rat into the glass and he's just like,
Yeah,
go ahead,
squeezing the blood out
take
of the
a
dead
sip.
rat.
I in my notes I do have in all caps the rat scene.
Yeah.
Because it's so that it's another one of those like perfect encapsulations of who Lestat is. He wants to use the crystal.
Yeah.
Yeah, the nice
He wants to
stuff.
use the nice glasses, and so he
Yeah.
uses the rat, but it's like it's not as good as the real thing.
Yeah,
And
it's-
I will say, this is what I'm getting at when I say this is the best vampire movie that we've seen. it is not necessarily about these individual characters. It is, and not necessarily about all the other stuff. It's just, this is the movie from their viewpoint. And I like all of this. I like and it's exposition done well. It is where it's like, you're given information where you need it, but it's not the long thing of like, Louis, this is what we need to do. This is how life is. This is how we hunt. But it's all there. And I'm like, yeah,
it's great. And
it is.
Oh, go ahead.
It is interesting in terms of like thinking about vampire films as a classic horror movie, is that they are the horror entity, and so you don't really get a sense of, is it tragic? Do they delight in it?
Mm-hmm.
Is there's so often no, because they're not real, or because they're not people anymore. They're just kind of a generic horror movie.
Also, in a lot of vampire movies, will have a vampire, or the intended victim, my long lost love, and she's torn between turning into a vampire, or whatever. But this is literally showing us a world of them, and just like any group, the thing I appreciate here, and in a very terrible way, Subspecies is doing the same thing, where it had Stefan, the brother, who was the good one, and the other brother
I was
going
to actually bring up a better movie that I think digs into that, which we love on the show. One of our favorites is Near Dark, which gets into,
of course,
the vampire existence, the day-to-day.
Yeah.
In a modern set. God damn, that's a great movie.
That's an amazing movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is where it's like, look, there will be different kinds, and I do like that. It's like, Lestat is the hedonist who's been doing it for so long and just doesn't even see humans as anything other than cattle. And Louis the new guy who still has a soul, and that dichotomy. And then when Claudia enters the picture, she's being torn between both, but Claudia's pretty clearly on her way to being a freaking Lestat.
Well, and actually,
she goes to
she's going further
draining
than
people right off the bat.
I mean, I do like all the stuff where Lestat's like, "What the fuck? You can't do that."
Yeah.
And she plays with her victims in a very similar way. I mean, she can't be the seductive lover that Lestat
but she can be the sweet little girl.
You see that when she's on the bench and stuff.
In the book, there's a little anecdote of Louis being totally disgusted with her because they go to the coffin maker to have a child's coffin made and spend like all of this time like building up her imminent death. Like he meets Claudia and he the coffin maker mourns her and then she kills him.
Wow.
And it's that same sort of like, yes, she is very much Lestat's
She's
daughter.
As cold as ice.
Yeah.
Willing to sacrifice.
I was waiting for someone else to do the lyric.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But I will say, it's so interesting that when we're talking about this, and I want to pop out of the movie for just a second here to once again talk about, one of the things I was thinking about, I was watching it with the Tom Cruise movie star persona at this time, is I didn't see anything in the trivia about this, and I know this is like a huge book, but I can't imagine his agents were like, oh yeah, this is the move to play like this psychotic vampire. I mean, I guess it is it's just, I was just looking at like, what was he doing around this? He's done A Few Good Men, The Firm, then this. So it's like, total, image of morality in those movies, then this. And then throughout his career, he kind of does this where whenever he takes a risk, then it's Mission Impossible. You know what I mean? Then it's like, ultimate hero guy. And then it's like, I do Minority Report, and then boom, Mission Impossible 2. It's sort of like, I do think it's interesting where he's like, I don't want to get, he does sort of, so I just think it's this interesting, but this is like a very it both is and isn't a movie star performance. And I think it's a very interesting thing that it is such a iconic
I think
movie
it
star
is a movie star performance, and sometimes the role, and actors are smart about it, sometimes the one they know the breakout role is sometimes the supporting character that's just more interesting and more awesome. It's just like every actor that is up for an OK Corral movie wants to play Doc Holliday.
Yeah.
It's never Doc Holliday's story, it's always Wyatt Earp's.
Yeah.
But they know that Doc Holliday is the breakout awesome character. Yeah. So that's the same thing here where he's like going, yeah, I'm not Louis, and I'm totally fine with that because Lestat is the guy. And it was smart.
I mean, I was reading some of the reviews from the time, and one of them talks about the power of Cruise's performance, that he can disappear for an hour of this movie, and you're still thinking about him that whole time. Like,
and you cheer when he's back, like at the very end, when he's back on, you're like, yeah, that's one of the best scenes. That's one of the funniest, like, little tiny scenelets in the movie is the very end there.
Yeah.
Because you're so happy to have him back.
Oh,
he does actually, and this is the power of his acting, he does actually wring some sympathy out of you for Lestat, which of course Louis is helping, because he says things like, I kept thinking about how terrible we were to Lestat. But you do feel terrible for him when he's sitting there and he's just all decrepit and like going, the lights from the helicopters. He's like, don't worry about it. I do think it's weird that in all those years that he never like read a newspaper or something, because he seems like he just stayed in the and so he doesn't know what a helicopter. I'm like, come on, guy, come on. It's been decades.
I mean, it does
read
feel
a
like
paper.
At a certain point, this is just you moping to an extreme. Like,
exactly.
No,
you are really you've become Louis.
I'm never gonna leave the sewers. This
never
is
gonna leave the sewers.
Yeah, it's gonna be. Yeah,
he's just biding his time to rock star era so that he can break
Oh,
out.
yeah.
And I'm like, how good a rocker could he be? He's never even heard like the origins of rock. He's gonna come out and go like, "Oh, I get synth metal."
I
like,
will say the end of this, the very end that you were talking about, that last scene, did make.
How does he know how to drive a car?
Well, no, okay, these are Brendan Jones questions. No, but I go, damn, I did really want a sequel, because I want a whole movie with the tone of that last scene.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was what I was thinking, is like, yes, when he's full on like super villaining at the end of it, I'm like, I want 2 hours of deliciously evil Tom Cruise. Like,
and that's kind of, I mean, the Vampire Lestat does go back and like get into his origin, but that's kind of what it would have been.
Yeah, I know that I don't know if that's a lack of interest from Cruise or the studio or what happened, but you're right, Brendan. It is insane they weren't like, get the Vampire Lestat in production right now.
It doesn't make any sense.
Why do we not? I mean, this was not a time when we were signing people to multiple movies quite yet, but it does seem like that is wild.
And this made money. That's usually the reason why you don't get a sequel. But this thing was successful. So what is the deal, Warner Brothers?
we should because
talk to me. Call me.
I often
have my number.
This is a $60 million movie. It made $223 worldwide. That's big for this time.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah, for this time.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just think that's interesting. It just feels like, and it feels like Cruise seemed to have a great time playing this part. He'd want to come back maybe and explore. I mean, he's certainly never been a guy against franchise.
Nope.
So it is because Warner Brothers dicked around with the rights to the Vampire Chronicles until the very last minute. It was like set to expire kind of right after Interview with the Vampire came out.
Oh boy, that's classic. It was always going to be some kind of legal reason. And then somehow they end up putting out Queen of the Damned like 8 years later, because that was also Warner Brothers, I believe. And it's terrible. Sorry, spoilers for that episode when we get there.
Don't prejudge.
I should say yes. In my memory, it's terrible.
No, in your memory, you're correct.
Yeah,
it's terrible.
Because I remember it being like, and I remember seeing it and going, "This is supposed to be the same kind of thing as Interview with the Vampire. This is huge step down." That's why I think the idea of doing it as a TV show, especially now, makes a lot of sense.
Well, this way they can just keep going. Yeah, I mean,
exactly.
if it's a success, they can move on to all the books.
Go right into Vampire Lestat as another season and stuff.
Jesus,
like
that Outlander thing is it still going?
Yeah, I think
they're
going
like
through
those
6
books
or 7. You know, they're burning
pretty
through.
Amazing.
That's my sister's bag. She loves.
I watched the first. I never read the books, but I watched the first season. I was like, this is okay.
Show. That is her mythology. She loves that stuff, and that's great.
Okay.
I haven't seen it.
Hey,
I can't speak.
To each their own.
Yeah. So Louis, burns down his plantation. We can go through this, and I do like the whole thing about like the slaves on the plantation being like, "Yeah, there's an evil spirit around here, and we don't like that guy who's hanging out anymore. He's a bad influence."
Yeah, like and this is his slaves care about him. Boy, is that a uncomfortable thing. It's like we worry about you,
You don't
Mr.
know-
Louis, and we don't want
But
that man hanging around you anymore.
I forget at least for half a second when I have as good an actor as Tandy Newton here
Yeah.
doing this that I am going like, hey, yeah, they worry about you. Oh, they're slaves, like. But at least they kind of took me out of it where I'm just going like, man, you are very talented, and this is real early in her career.
Intercut too with the dancing around the bonfire and the kind of racist voodoo doll depictions.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it's once again the movie is so
Asian
handsome.
culture of New Orleans did have all that in it, but it is much.
It's
but the whole thing of
though,
what he says when he kills her, then he opens the house to tell the slaves to run away and be free because he is the devil. The thing he says when he opens the door, I swear to God, I need to write it down because that will be how I always greet people when I open my door. I will say, this place is cursed, and yes, your master is the devil. I will do this, and I want to just see what the DoorDash people, how they respond to that.
This place is cursed, and yes, your master is the devil. Here's your burrito.
Yeah,
sir?
here's your burrito.
Can I go now?
And you're not my master, but I'll take that devil thing under advisement. Thank you. Gotta go.
Sure thing, whatever, Mr. Devil.
Okay. Here's your dipping sauces.
And then it's yet another scene though where now this leads to Louis just moping around, munching on rats, wandering the streets, and yes, this is how he finds Claudia. Here.
Yeah, a few years have passed, I think, because now there's a plague on the city.
Well, because that whole thing kind of split up him and Lestat at least a little bit, or they're on the outs at this point.
Yeah.
They're still kind of together, but it's sort of like...
I think they bump into each other or something.
Well, because he's going to show up here.
They're like odd couple roommates.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
What we don't see is they've put the tape down the middle of the house, so they each have.
I like Lestat as a
side.
social climber too, where he's most upset by what Louis did to the mansion, just because, dude, you had all this money and this nice place. Look at what you fucked up for us.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you.
We
have to
had
like
a
stay in hotel
pad,
rooms.
pal. Yeah.
One of the sort of it wouldn't have added anything to the movie, but it did make me go, oh, is that explicitly in the book the reason that Lestat changes Louis is because he has no idea how to invest money.
Wow, I do like that.
A hot accountant.
He is an accountant. I thought it was going to be like a sugar daddy.
I mean, also as a sugar daddy, but like,
well, the fact he moves right into Louis' house,
yeah, like he can steal things from his victims. He can gamble, but he can't actually run business.
Yeah, yeah.
Louis can.
That's good.
Yeah.
I bet that's something the show will do for sure.
It is, yeah. It is just
a very
nice,
practical-minded thing.
Yeah.
Well, because it is something you do kind of like especially when you're so getting into the life of vampires, like this Anne Rice stuff does. You do have to go things like, well, what do they still have to function in the world and have money?
Yeah.
And, it is like you never think about Dracula having to like count money or be like, oh, let me balance the books this month.
If they have all the powers of a traditional vampire, they could sit there and manipulate people's minds.
But that gets so tedious after a while. You want to do that every time you have to like move cities?
Yeah, it's like, it's time for you to pay the rent. I already paid the rent.
Give me.
Okay, well, great. Well, we'll see you later.
They're just like,
great.
I need $20.
Yeah.
Now
bus fare. Give me the bus fare.
I think to be fair, in today's society, it's probably easier to have a digital account and stuff like that, right? And just go, you will transfer your life savings to me, right? Like that's probably you can get a lot quicker. But back then, yeah, you pretty much had to hold on to
John, I'm gonna need your banking information so I can send all my money to you.
Oh yes.
It totally worked.
Routing number is 047. Yeah. So he finds Claudia, who's clutching onto her corpse of a mother. Very disturbing, haunting little scene.
Yeah.
And she says, "Please, sir, I need help. I do love the way when he finally bites her here. The second he bites her, Lestat's like, "Oh, so that's what we're doing, huh?"
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like he appears out of nowhere, just like biting a kid.
Well, yeah, he's kind of like, I caught you.
What were you saying? Sorry, Olivia. What was
Which
it?
gives the implication that he's just been following Louis around this whole time, watching him eat rats, waiting for him. Which is, again, that sort of little pathetic strain of Lestat that is so funny.
Yeah.
It is.
Just like, oh.
And it is. And you just gotta think he's like a few steps behind him and go, "Don't. He's not gonna eat that. Oh, he's eating that rat. Oh,
he's eating the rat.
Oh,
God.
Man.
I was pulling for you, Louis, but you're eating the rat again.
Yeah, and it is this weird, like, aha, but also, oh, good, he's eating a kid. I love it.
Yeah.
Which is great. And then, of course, when Cruz picks up the corpse of the mother. Oh, it's so good. I love all the ghoulish stuff in this movie like that, where it's just like...
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that there are... I am not such a huge fan of the tragic romancy stuff in this, because I mean it's okay, but I love, and this is Neil Jordan, but I'm sure it's of course this based on stuff in the books as well. But it's just when it gets dark, I'm like, because you're not gonna lean too hard on one thing or the other.
Yeah.
Well, and when you're dealing with Lestat, he's, on top of being a vampire, he's a sociopath, right? Like, there is.
But also, like later on, when he's like, "You're too old for these dolls," and he knocks the dolls off, and there's the corpse of the woman she saw in the window. I mean, again, it's things like that. I'm like going, yes, because the dark soul of this stuff, it's what makes everything else palatable. And I'm like, yeah, they're not forgetting these are monsters. And they might have personalities and souls.
What's great about that scene is Lestat is upset, not that she's killed this person. It's the, why would you hold on to that? You've soiled the room, and that's gonna like draw attention. He's got all these rules about like we don't kill people in the house.
Yeah, you don't shit where you eat.
Eminently practical, like as a person, he just is always thinking about
he's been doing it for a while,
because it's like it's not like the bad that would come is like now we gotta move again, Nobody's putting Lestat in prison, but it is just like, dude, I don't want to pick up,
and nobody puts baby in the corner.
That's true. I wouldn't have been surprised if Swayze sniffed around this at one time in this.
Oh, yeah. Or Warner Brothers sniffed around him for
That's what I mean.
Because it's just like going to a name. Go to a name. He's a name. He's hunky.
Yeah, I think probably since the book was written, because I do see at some point Travolta was interested, like when the book was kind of new, like late 70s, early 80s, Travolta in his hunk phase was interested in the book. I think
I watched that movie.
Yeah, I don't know. I think like Saturday Night Fever, Grease era Travolta, he could have done it.
I think he became a much better actor.
I'd watch it.
Yeah, boy, come on, I'm a vampire over here. In my version of it, Louis from Brooklyn.
Up your nose with a rubber hose.
Yeah.
You loved him as a sweat hog. Now see him as a vampire.
Yeah. And there'd be so much more dancing.
Would there?
In that version. Yeah.
That corpse scene would have been choreographed.
It would have been choreographed. Would have gone on for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And would have been scored by the Bee Gees. Yeah. So I'm okay with that.
Jesus. Lestat turns her, of course, here.
Yeah.
Well,
he does that kind of for her, but mostly for Louis. Again, as in your conscience is clear. You didn't actually kill her.
Well,
because that would have killed Louis to think he had actually killed her.
Louis like, don't do that. He's like, what, you want her to fucking die? Is that what you want?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's a gross manipulation of
But then this weird twisted like, this is our daughter. She's part of our family. This is our weird little family. And I do like that because Lestat is not the main character. I'm like, you're being shitty, but there's obviously some sincere part of you because he really does like raise Claudia and he's getting her piano.
Those are some of the best scenes where it's sort of like, not that it humanizes him because again, but it's almost like a flash to what he might have been as just a man, as a person.
Yeah.
Because even though he is using her as a tool for and against Louis, he does take to her and he does sit there and they have this bond, which is very sweet. She is the daughter of both.
Yeah.
But the paperback version my brother had, the one I read back in the 80s, that was the cover of it. I mean, not the stars, obviously. It's pre the movie.
I know exactly what you're talking about because I have the exact
Oh
same
yeah,
one.
it's like a white cover, but it has like a little family photo thing, and it's these actors as Louis and Lestat and Claudia. And I remember looking at that going, oh, that's just weird. And the back cover of it, they're playing all that up. It's like, she'll never grow up. Are they her fathers or her lovers? And I'm like, what is this? But then I read the book. I was like,
Interesting way to
oh,
sell
it
the
is
book.
a lot of purple prose.
It's also deeply funny because both actors, or both people in that photo on
Yeah,
the
the models.
cover they look both exactly like Lurch.
Yeah. They are tall, lanky dudes wearing like white tuxedos.
Like
Everyone's
very
in white.
bad, like very square faces,
Mhm.
very angry looking.
Yeah. Why would they smile?
I've got to look.
They didn't have money to spend on vampire teeth.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Keep those mouths closed. I will say, we've seen a lot of vampire movies. Some of the best fang work in this movie.
Oh, great fangs.
Very natural, not impeding the actors' performances at all.
They reached a really nice middle ground where they're not popping in and out. They're talking with them in their mouths. And if you just met them on the street, you might notice, like, wow, you've got some crazy
Sharp
canines,
yeah.
but they don't look like, you are a horrifying monster person.
Like I've met people with canines that that are
Right.
kind of look that sharp.
Pronounced, yeah.
Did you make anything with garlic near them, and just to test them? Did you do that?
I didn't.
Here, I have a slice of pizza.
Oh
I've let a vampire loose in the world. I'm sorry.
I'm looking at the paperback you guys are talking about. So it's the back of the book that has that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so cheap.
It's
very cheap.
Really.
And the front of it, the front cover is so boring. It's like a teacup and white gloves. It looks like I would never want to read this.
Yeah.
This looks so,
It very much looks like a romance novel cover in a bad way.
It really
this
does.
That wasn't its first edition. This is like a later so this wouldn't be your introduction to the novel. It just was a later.
There's an amazing one that is the most. It looks like Frank Langella Dracula, and he's holding a woman in a very romance cover like Fabio pose, but it's the most Dracula looking dude just holding a woman, and you're just like, my God, the way they sold this book is very interesting because those looking for the romance novel, it is ghastly as we're talking about. So it's interesting that it's going to probably turn off people who would like it, but then upset people who want what that cover promises.
Yep.
Weird, bad choices. But to be fair, I love that era. There's a whole book out that I want to get that is just the covers of that era of paperback horror.
Oh, I know exactly that book, Paperbacks from Hell.
Yeah.
I have it.
Oh, good. Yeah. That's a book I keep.
It's all these great 80s and 70s and 80s horror and sci-fi book covers
that often promise.
That was a golden age.
And they often promise things that those books cannot deliver.
Oh, of course.
So we have this whole thing where they're basically this montage of through time is this little family. This is where we get her sleeping in Louis' coffin, and she does that. Now, an interesting thing about this, talk about who really wanted the role of Claudia was Christina Ricci, coming off of the Addams Family movies.
I'm so glad that Kirsten Dunst got this, but also that would have been
That's a tough call, because that would have been awesome.
Yeah, that would have been a good.
I think the thing that probably hurt her was it's like, well, you're already the goth girl in the Addams Family movies.
She has never really gotten rid of that, to tell you the truth.
And
to this day.
And what's she doing now? She's back in that Tim Burton show. I'm so excited they actually included her in the Wednesday Addams show. And she, of course, she's doing huge with Yellow Jackets, where she's playing a creepy lady, though.
Hey.
Yeah. I mean, she just is. She just look at her. She is the embodiment of goth. I don't even think she has to try to be it. She is this dark-haired, pale girl.
Which also probably hurt her because that's not, even though this is a goth romance book, she is not a goth,
Yeah.
No,
yeah, that's right. Claudia is not.
She's not. Yeah.
Kirsten Dunst has more of the angelic, period of.
Well, that's the whole thing. Is she literally? That's the whole thing with the dolls. She is supposed to be this little angel, which is why it's so disturbing how greedy she is for blood.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, okay. Also considered for the role were Dominique Swain. Remember, she had kind of a run there. She ended up being Lolita, and wasn't that Neil Jordan?
Yeah.
Or was it Adrian Lyne? Maybe it was Adrian Lyne.
Oh, it was Adrian Lyne, right?
Yeah.
And it had our good friend
Jeremy Irons.
Jeremy Irons, right?
And Frank Langella.
Yeah.
And Julia Stiles. And Evan Rachel
she must
Wood.
have been a little kid then too.
And
well, I mean, they all had to be.
Well,
right?
I mean, I said Julia Stiles, Evan Rachel Wood. I mean, these are all people who will be the kid actors through all those things, right?
And Evan Rachel Wood would go on to play a vampire lady in True Blood,
in True
right?
Blood. And actually, I don't really know. She would have been very young, but I can kind of see she's got a similar vibe to a Kirsten Dunst.
She would have done a good job with the eternal, like the woman inside of the child body.
She's
Because
always
all
had
of her child roles.
Yeah.
Yeah, she is like, oh, you're a little adult.
I always have to.
Yep,
She's always one of those people where I go like, oh, she's like my age, but she's been around forever, and she's always played these mature characters. I'm like, she must surely be in her mid-40s. Oh, she's only like a year or two older than me.
Yeah,
Like,
crazy.
all right. Yeah, I know, right? Yes.
You're all children to me, so whatever.
Well, and it's so interesting that she does play not a vampire, but the robot woman on Westworld who has the similar kind of haunted qualities, and yeah. So no, but I think they made the right. I mean, Neil Jordan was dead on with this casting because she's wonderful. But I do. You talk about the movie like it is like just when I was losing interest in the movie, then the Claudia stuff starts, and now I'm back into like, ooh, fascinating. And the way her storyline goes, I love the realization of, and always the tragedy of the child vampire. We even saw that a little bit in the aforementioned Near Dark with that character where it's like, yeah, being stuck at like 12, 13, oof.
Yeah.
That's a nightmare.
And we saw it in probably the best representation was Return to Salem's Lot. With
oh my God, an episode Elliot was on, yeah.
What's her name? Young
Tara Reid.
Tara Reid.
Yeah.
God,
yeah.
it's
horrible movie.
Oh man,
horrible movie.
That is dreadful.
Yeah.
That movie is streaming right now, and because it is the Halloween season,
Sure.
I said, "Oh yeah, I remember watching this movie," and then I watched the trailer and went, "Oh yeah, I remember watching this movie."
Salem's Lot, the original miniseries,
Brilliant.
is still really good, especially for
like
70s
crazy.
TV.
Holds
But then
up like
Return to
crazy.
Salem's Lot is a garbage fire.
Yeah.
Oh,
rough.
it's so bad. That's the other thing too. Is like, yeah, we've seen a lot of bad vampire movies. You don't until you start.
that's right. We've seen a lot of bad vampire movies.
Yeah, as always, ladies.
I know. It's like, and can you believe we're still single?
Still single, ladies.
Yeah.
But no, you don't realize how many vampire movies there are until you start doing a podcast like this and go like,
yeah,
oh Christ, or how many Howling movies there are. God damn it,
I'm
we're still not
literally
done.
avoiding the sun right now.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's suspicious.
Brendan sizzling.
This will be good. Right here.
Yeah. So because we get the scene where she sees the woman bathing through the window, and she's looking at it longingly, like that's what I want to be. And I do like Lestat is just like, nice.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. It sounds like so you want her, you want to eat her or whatever, and she's like, no, I want to be her.
Yeah. And he's like,
and
huh?
he's complaining about women of the time.
Yeah.
And he says, "Oh, of course Claudia finds the one."
Yeah.
Like that's a true Creole woman.
Yeah. God
Yeah.
damn.
It's so gross.
God
Yeah.
damn, says Lestat.
Again, another direct quote from the film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think this is
Really?
Damn.
this movie, once again, something we've talked about a lot because we watch a lot of schlock exploitation stuff. The nudity in this movie is really well used and this is something I keep going is in that it is upsetting on paper. Like it is designed to be. It is not a Roger Corman movie where it's like you got to up the boob factor. It's more just like every time.
Well, pretty much every time there's nudity, they are about to be prey, and they're usually terrified.
The scene in the vampire theater is very unsettling.
Oh yeah,
that is the most disturbing of the. And then here it is, just like it is, and here it is used so artfully in literally presenting this is a woman's body and a child going, I can never have what is the maturity of that. It's not even really meant to be like, check it out, fellas. Look at that. It is very much presenting it matter-of-factly. So
though the version I have did have a little chroma key scrawl that said, fellas, with an arrow.
Wow.
And I was like,
awooga.
Yeah,
but I do.
It had the boob horn that went off. It's like, did I have that version? Is that am I the only one?
Between doing this show and a cheap B action movie show.
You've seen a lot of
I'm so
unnecessary nudity.
As soon as any woman is nude in a movie, I'm so quick to be like, oh, fucking unnecessary. Because it's just it's my default, like, oh my God. Here it's going like, oh, how artfully used. Because once again, it's a filmmaker who's not a perv. Just going like, yeah.
Again,
at least as far as I know, Neil Jordan.
Many props to Mr. Jordan.
Such a good filmmaker, man. I love most of his movies. And then further adding to that is the thing we kind of talk about, where Lestat has brought her a doll, and she's like, "You think I want a doll?"
Yeah,
and he's like, and it is Lestat not being prepared for. In a weird way, there's this parent parallel where he's like, "Oh, I wasn't prepared for this." Eternal child to ever mature beyond this, so he's like
she's grown up,
because he does say
she's
like
grown up emotionally. She's like, oh great, another doll, great. And he's like 35 years old,
and he is just going like, but I always bring you. That's like our thing. What do you want me to?
What do I do now?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it is almost like you want him and Louis to be like, she's just changing so much, man. I don't know how to deal with her. She said she hates me. Oh, she can't mean that, Lestat. You do get that scene. She has the scene where she screams, I hate both of you. Yeah. She says she hates both Louis and Lestat, and then settles to, sorry, I only hate Lestat, actually.
Yeah, I actually love you still.
Which is interesting as we talk about, because she feels so patterned after Lestat that she would be like, that's the one I fucking hate.
I do love this it very explicit in the books, but is less so in the movie, of like Louis as very much the mother role and Lestat as her dad, and him being like, like my baby girl is growing up, and he doesn't actually talk to her the way that Louis does, and so he's very shocked and confused, and always he's like, why is she like this, Louis? Why does she hate me so?
Then the turn though, with that then becoming like, oh well, is there like a romantic feeling toward Louis then as a partner, and I can never be that because I am a child no matter how old I am. This is great tragic romance stuff. It really works, and you have good actors doing it. And Kirsten Dunst always gets asked about kissing Brad Pitt when she was 12. And talking about how
she goes, that was my first kiss of all time.
And it wasn't exciting because I was 12 and I thought it was gross. And, but it just creeps me out to think there were a bunch of grown women watching us going, oh, to be that 12-year-old child.
Yeah.
And I'm going, when are they going to cut somebody in half with a scythe?
It's coming.
Oh, it delivers, man. It is sweet. It's pretty awesome. So, we're talking about slicing I do love. Okay, so then you get the scene where she cuts her hair and it grows back, which is a really interesting little wrinkle in the vampire mythos, that you are not only never going to age, you are literally
your age.
You are stuck with your physical appearance. You can't change your hair.
But that's weird because when she turned, she went from grimy little girl and then her hair got all pretty when she turned into a vampire. That was a weird thing. I'm like, really? Do you end up being an idealized version of yourself?
It seems
So
like it.
you did talk about earlier what happens when an Uggo gets turned into a vampire, and it's that they become preternaturally hot. Like them's
so
the
vampires
rule.
are unable to be unattractive.
I think in the Anne Rice world, yes, that is the case.
That does say a lot about Ms. Rice.
Yeah, interesting.
Rice.
Interesting. That I did think that scene was kind of weird, but I kind of also just went like, oh, well, whatever. Like, I kind of also glossed over it. But then here, when she's chopping it off and it grows back, I thought, oh wow, it's like, oh yeah, boy. Well, you better
listen. Being a fan of these books and then going into like, having years and years of being like, it would be so cool to be a vampire. There's a reason that I keep my hair not in super trendy styles. And so if I'm turned into a vampire, I don't have to deal with having a weird bowl cut or something.
You have given this a lot of thought.
Let's not try anything because you never know when you might get turned. Yeah. I never thought about that. Maybe that's the case. I have essentially gotten the same haircut my whole life. So yeah, there you go.
You're prepared.
Like, I'm just set in my style. I pretty much locked it in at 12 or whatever. And there we go. So she gets all upset. Talk about not slicing somebody in half, but the scene where she gets all pissed at Lestat and starts cutting his face with her nails. Very cool. Visualization of the visceral rage she feels towards him.
And I was surprised at how undated the CGI of his cuts immediately healing was.
Look good.
The movie?
Yeah.
I mean, we watch a lot of stuff that doesn't hold up. This movie, pretty much everything in it looks pretty good. There's one shot, which isn't even bad. It's just the worst in the movie and seems dated, but it's real quick. And that's when the theater's going up and you see
the skeleton.
Yeah, the skeleton guy goes like, and falls, and I'm like, oh, blue screeny, not good.
But that's the interesting thing about
it's funny. I knew exactly what you were talking about.
Yeah, that's the only shot. Everything else looks, like you said, it looks good, current.
Well, I think that's the thing about it too. There isn't an aggressive use of blue screen throughout the movie, so it is subtle, the moments like that where they do some CGI. But oftentimes, what doesn't age well is when you're trying very early to use CGI. And that stuff doesn't hold up. But yeah, I think the movie still looks great. It's still, as we're talking, it's still very. The fact that it's mostly a period piece helps in that too, because you're not getting. Aside from Christian Slater's wardrobe, you're not getting very 90s looking stuff.
Yeah.
Well, also I will say all of the men with their long hair, that was appropriate to like maybe an era that they've gone through, but that was definitely them making a 90s movie. I'm sitting there going, yeah, I'm sorry, but by the time we're up to the 1920s, Louis would not be in a ponytail, long hair. But according to her, I guess he's stuck with the long hair, I guess. All right, yeah.
So there is a character in
the
books who is a woman who lives as a man for a while, Gabrielle, who, she does have to go through every night cutting her hair. And it grows back in the morning, so that's like part of her.
She probably wears a lot of hats.
Yeah.
That's 100% will be a character in the show, I bet, because that is something.
She is Lestat's mother.
Oh,
so
well,
yes.
Well, then absolutely will be.
Hey, can I just say spoiler alert? Thanks.
Oh yeah, sorry.
But that can get
into
certainly subject matter that modern writers want to talk about. So which is great. So Claudia comes up with this plan to go, like, basically we're gonna run away from Lestat, right? And I do love the way she lures him in by going, I brought you these twin boys.
Yeah, I'm making up with you. I don't want us to fight anymore, so I brought you a treat. It's these twin boys. I got them drunk, and now they're ready for you to feed. And he's like, oh, thank you so much.
This, I think, is one of the best Cruise performances in this movie. This part, because it is really him going, he's so sincere here. It's a weird, it's an unusual part of Lestat where he's like, you mean you don't hate me anymore? Like he is a sociopath, but there is a love he has for both Louis and Claudia that's very real.
Yeah.
It again, as I keep talking about, plays into this very pathetic part of Lestat that he just wants to be loved.
He wants a family.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it's what's his undoing here. It's why this trap works for him. Because when he bites them, he's like, "Hey, whoa, wait a minute, something wrong with the blood here?" And he's
like, "Oh, you fed them absinthe," and she's like, "Nope, laudanum."
Yeah, and he's like, "They're already dead, but this keeps the blood warm." And he's like,
"This is great," but of course, this is again like some weird invention of Anne Rice's for vampire lore. But yeah, it's like, oh my god, we're never supposed to drink dead blood, and she's like, "Oh, oops," and it fucks him up,
and she just whips that blade across his throat, man.
Yeah,
and this is where you get a sense that Rick Baker, in a couple of these gory moments, is like, now I get to play. And Cruise.
Oh, the pooling blood, edging towards their feet is such a.
And she steps back from that too, just like she steps back from the sunlight again. Yeah. I'm like, oh man,
it's good
Neil
stuff.
Jordan is making a movie.
And something that is great about the movie is it is this very romantic, gothic, classic kind of almost literary vibe to it. But then there are the moments where you're like, no, then there's like a shit ton of blood when it needs to. It's not a gory movie throughout. But when it is there, like kind of like you're talking about that Anne Rice does in the books, Jordan will not shy away from that. And so that is sort of like, hey, to the young girls who are here for the Brad Pitt, purely for hunks of plenty, you're going to see some shit. And there's going to be plenty of young girls who are way into it, man.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is like the true Anne Rice fans are the girls who are like, bring on the blood and
this is not your Twilight crowd. This is these are real deal. They want a little horror in they'll swoon, but they'll also be like, fuck yeah.
Well, it's important that again, without Anne Rice, we would not have had Twilight.
No, I look at that as very much like this is the kiddie version of this. This is the kiddie and conservative version of it.
This is the conservative, uptight version of this.
Yeah.
A vampire going, let's wait until marriage, and you're like,
let's wait until marriage. Yeah. And yes, I sparkle in the sunlight.
And also, yes. We have to watch all those movies on this show.
Jesus Lord, man.
I know so many people. I tell people, they're like, "You gonna cover those?" I go, "Well, yeah, we're being exhaustive," and they're like,
Have either of you seen any of them before?
I watched the first 20 minutes of the first movie and turned it off.
You guys are in for a wild ride.
Yeah.
I mean, I know what the stories are. Again, I worked in a bookstore for so long, and I know the plot. I know all about, then the werewolf imprints on the baby, and I'm like, oh, God.
But the movies have some extra weirdness in them.
Good. I'm ready.
We're definitely gonna be guesting on those. I think my sister's gonna do one of those because she was prime perfect age to be obsessed with those books and movies, and now is old enough to be like, what was I thinking?
What was I thinking? Indeed.
Yeah.
I was also in that prime range, and
we may have to have you back for one of those episodes.
Whichever one has the baseball game. Anyway, let's move on.
Yeah.
Is that the first one? Okay.
There you go. That's sort of the thing. I've seen clips like that. I've seen things that are like, people go like, what is this? Look at this. So they get out of there. I do also love the effect of him decaying as the blood is pouring out of him. Very cool stuff.
Which I had remembered that as solely a movie thing, but again, as I was watching, I was flipping to that page in the book, and that is like that scene is pretty much word for word, description wise and everything. It's pretty accurate to the book.
Then it gets into this this thing in the movie that I don't think lands fully in the movie. I'm guessing is a bigger part of the book, which is Claudia studying vampires and this whole idea of where are other vampires. And the movie it gets them to the vampire theater and stuff, and I get that. But this is the least effective part of the movie to me.
Yes. And in fact, they miss out on a very cool opportunity to go full Dracula because they do go to Eastern Europe
Well,
and
they
they
show it.
find yeah, but they find all of these covens of like
Oh,
weird mindless vampires.
nice.
Um
That's
and
cool.
yeah, I was
In the
reading and I
movie,
was like, ah, why is this not in the
My
movie?
guess
Come
is
on.
both probably time and cost would be my
It
guess.
it it while watching the movie, I looked at the timestamp and went, "Oh, it's because they realized
Which
we've been doing this for an hour."
I
And
Louis just talks over and says over the years, and we
Yeah.
get this montage,
Well,
and I do like we're moving up through
one of the
time,
things
but it's all Claudia's
one of the things
drawings of
I
where
really
they've gone.
like about this movie that would totally not be the case if it existed today. 2-hour runtime. Pretty nice. This would easily be a 2.5 to 3 hour movie today.
100% 3-hour movie.
Yeah, I
Yep.
know. I'm just like, and so that's why, great, go do it as, you know, they're going to do it as an 8-part thing on AMC or whatever. Great. I'm totally willing to see it in 45-minute to hour-long bites. But I'm so glad this is a movie. It tells a beginning, middle, and end story across 2 hours, and I think it's pretty effective for them. Like I said, it lulls in places, but never to the point where I'm like, oh, geez, I want to turn this off.
No.
They do a pretty good job of getting this into 2 hours, and kind of like you're talking about, Olivia, they left stuff out, but not, you know, they make decisions that are like, well, yeah, if you're really gonna do it, yeah, that makes sense. So I do appreciate that it's just like, yeah, this is still a time when it's like you didn't creep over 2 hours, really.
And with them cutting out stuff in the second half of the movie as well, it is also partially probably to skip over a lot of the Claudia Louis romance.
Yeah. We get the sense through that montage that they have been companions for this long time, right? And so then
Which is all it needs to be as we were saying earlier, like the movie walks a really good line of it doesn't need to be defined.
Right. Yeah.
So let's get to Paris here, and where we meet Stephen Ray in our Marx Brothers kind of thing. I've always really liked Stephen Ray. Love his performance in this. He's just a great actor.
He is.
And,
One thing.
Mm-hmm.
I can only like do another half hour, John. This is sort of off
no, we're good.
Mike.
We're good. That's why I'm jumping
I know.
to Paris.
Oh no, I appreciate it. I just want to let you know that sadly it's ticking away, and it just shows how much we're enjoying the movie.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Let's get to Paris.
Okay, we're in Paris now.
I also see in the trivia here, just real quick, that our aforementioned buddy Jeremy Irons turned down the role of Lestat at one point.
Oh.
No, again, it's a good choice. I mean, he is magnetic, but I don't see him doing it.
Yeah, again, would have trended a little too villainous.
And also chilly. Like he's a cold actor in a great way, but he's cold.
Also, at one point in development, the role of Louis was rewritten to be a female.
Oh, geez.
That would have changed the dynamics a lot, and they were looking at either Cher or Angelica Houston.
All right, yeah. Okay.
But I mean, that shows you, because we talk about there's almost 20 years to get this book to screen. So, like anything, there is just people going, "What about this?"
Yeah. There is a beautiful alternate universe where Cher plays Louis. But I'm glad I don't live in it.
On paper, those are like, well, yeah, you just grab the two vampire-looking ladies, you know? Like, it's not... There's not a whole lot of, like, why would they be right for that? And also, yeah, what does that do to the movie? Probably not anything good, actually. Making Louis a woman would radically change the story.
No, they were just very afraid of any homoeroticism, any hint of it.
Yeah.
That's why they were thinking about that.
Okay, so here was the note I had, which is Stephen Ray studied French comedy and pantomime to prepare for this. The scene in which he dances was inspired by Fred Astaire's famous scene in Royal Wedding.
Oh, very nice. He's great, and he's always great.
Yep.
I thought the meet was an awesome scene where like we pretty much gave up on ever seeing another vampire, and suddenly they're in Paris. There is this dude in a cape who mimics him, and Louis like entertained, and that's bizarre. And suddenly the guy can float and walk up a wall, and the only thing, and that's really well done, except for the big thing. If you're wearing a cloak and you're upside down, your
The
cloak
cloak.
will fall.
Not when
And
you're a vampire, though.
Apparently not when you're a vampire.
Hey,
It's
listen,
still a great scene. And basically he gives him the card for the Theater of the Vampires.
Yep.
And he's like, oh, hey, thanks, buddy. And guess where Claudia and he go?
To the
Theater of the Vampires, which is
Dang.
this big Grand Guignol. They're actually doing very much the stuff that the Grand Guignol was known for until you get to the end and they're literally killing a woman on stage. And the audience is like unsure, is this real or not?
Then comes out, and I say this as a very comfortable with myself heterosexual man, the sexiest vampire in this movie, Antonio Banderas.
Oh yeah.
I mean, this
except for the wig is goofy, but no, he is a beautiful man.
I'm just saying the like 90s Banderas. I don't know that there's a better looking man on screen.
This movie pretty much defined like what I found attractive as a prepubescent girl. Was the men and in this movie. Like
so bewigged men. I mean, you love men in wigs.
I mean, I was into weird vampire stuff.
Yeah.
So yes.
I mean, but I'm just like, he comes out and he is, and that adds to this. There's this eroticism. He strips this woman, and it's horrifying and sexy, and it's a great vampire scene because it kind of gets through all the emotions of a vampire scene, you know?
Oh, absolutely. And I do love it as being a form of entertainment where the audience who is there to see something gory and scary, which is what they're known for. But I do love the idea of that's fake, right? What they're doing is fake. But this woman is pleading for her life, and it is
the line, the woman in the audience who shouts, "Take me, Mr. Vampire, I adore you."
Yeah.
While this woman is begging for them to let her live is so funny and horrifying at the same
Stephen
time.
Ray going, "You'll get your turn."
Yeah.
Oh, great.
So good.
And Armand apparently has the power of what we're talking about, like mental control. Because he does the whole thing of like, it doesn't hurt at all. You're not scared. He's whispering in her ear, so she then goes quiet, and they lay her on the stage. And again, great shot. Neil Jordan puts that camera up there, and they just, all in their black robes, they just descend on her, and they're feeding.
What's great
and
is
the audience doesn't even applaud. They just leave quietly.
What's great about it is Armand is seducing her, and he bites her in this very sexual way before he lays her down, and then she's just devoured by these animalistic creatures.
Like insect almost.
It's so cool. Yeah, they're moving in this inhuman way as this mass, and
of course they cut to Louis in the audience, and Louis is disgusted, and he says monsters. They're monsters. And then when Armand's like, "Hey buddy, you're our new friend, come take a tour of the backstage," he's like going, "You guys are monsters." He goes, "Yeah, I guess so. Anyway, look at this, we live under the theater."
We live in the theater, and they just have this girl that they're all feeding on like as a buffet.
Oh, it's a boy.
Oh, is it a boy? Yeah. Well,
a very effeminate, twinkish boy.
I will say sometimes my diligent note taking on these movies means I don't catch every detail.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean I think that's the whole thing, and it's very similar to a Thrall where they keep this kid alive to be like, go get us things or drive our coaches, and we're just going to drink off you. He's got scars on his neck and is all over his wrist. Yeah. So much so that when he's offered to Louis for a bite, Louis like, "I'm not going to bite into your scabs." He finds a different place on the hand to bite.
Yeah. There's like we're not sharing needles here, man. This is pretty messed up.
That's basically
kind of
it.
stuff,
It's
right?
the drug metaphor.
But I like that Armand represents this sort of middle ground viewpoint between Lestat and Louis, right? That he is sort of like, well, I love his whole thing here about how there's no God to judge me or no devil to worry about. Like, you don't really believe in that mythical nonsense, so I make up my own morality and what is right and wrong then.
I think. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say it's so interesting. This Lestat and Armand are atheistic in kind of, or not in kind of, in vastly different ways, and that Lestat is like, I don't care.
Yeah.
and Armand says there is no God, so I am God in
Yeah.
Right.
this, and it becomes this weird, like the Theater of the Vampires is this weird like religious ritual almost for vampirism.
Yeah.
And it's this like
I
dark.
think they're like a Church of Satan, as in
Well,
their whole philosophy is like, we are not to be judged, and basically our existence is to do what we like
Well-
and to pleasure ourselves, and so yeah, as their leader, he's this charismatic guy. Louis is clearly Anne Rice's Catholicism. Talk about guilt and soul.
Yeah.
But I think that Armand is not being turned by Louis. It's his attraction to Louis that he's like going, maybe there's a different way. And he's seeing something unique in Louis that, had it been any other vampire that showed up at this theater, Armand would not be like
because it's
endangering them.
that he, I mean, we joked about Louis having a soul being a shitty superpower.
Yeah.
But no other vampire has a conscience or like
Yeah. Well, and because
he
it's
is so tied to being a human still in a way that none of the rest of them are, and
Right.
want to be, like some part of them, like
it's Armand who's intrigued by that, right? He's the one who calls him. He goes, a vampire with a soul.
Yeah, yeah.
How interesting. And also, he's the one
And
who's
then,
like,
and then you hear the theme to Angels start.
well, I mean, that literally, of course, was the whole pitch there. But the thing, also, he's the one who goes, hey, that little girl vampire, this crowd's not going to be cool with that, man. You got to get her out of here. That is.
We learn more about the
way
rules
not
of
okay.
vampirism. And Louis has a narration thing where he goes, once again, I find out that Lestat left a few things out.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you don't kill your own kind.
Oh, yeah, because
And
they do
know
talk
that
about,
Claudia killed.
hey,
or
what happened to that Lestat guy?
sort of
Because
killed Lestat. Right.
he'll that could
And you
also be
don't
trouble.
turn a child. So these are two sins that they've already done.
Yeah. So it's like best bet is get her out of here, man.
The thing that has always made me laugh about that scenario in particular is you don't turn, like those being the two ultimate sins, is okay, you don't turn a child. So Lestat is the one who did that.
Mm-hmm.
So by killing him, they, like Claudia and Louis, sort of
That's true.
were acting. That was always the thing that. They just need a good lawyer.
Well,
Like,
well, that's it. There's no
they were
trial.
like-
They're found guilty, just in general, because they're like, we think this is what you did. We're pretty sure we put this together.
It could also be argued, if it came down to a vampire court, it's like, no, they didn't kill Lestat. He's still around. They thought they killed him.
Yeah.
He's still around, though.
Well, I did also think that, where it's like they they get put to death for that, and then you're like, wait, he's alive.
Wait a minute.
So in the book, he actually helps orchestrate that.
Oh,
He's there, and they know he's alive.
That's
nice.
That's an interesting thing
It
not
is
to
the
put in the
attempted
movie.
murder that they are put, and also that she is a child vampire.
That is
The
so
movie's decided to hold off on the big shock surprise that he's still alive.
Because it doesn't really make a ton of sense until you get into the later books and you find out that Armand and Lestat have a whole history, and it's like,
Yeah, and that, I think maybe that makes Lestat a little bit too much like, yes, that the movie kind of avoids. So Claudia, Claudia now is kind of feeling like, hey, you're going to go off with Armand and abandon me. So the least you can do is turn this lady who wants to be my mother, and then at least I can go off with somebody. And
a lady who runs a toy store with little dolls in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They're cute. I guess until what happens. But and Louis is kind of against it, but then sort of reluctantly goes. And this is one of my favorite Brad Pitt performances in this movie, is the scene where he's lying out on the balcony and she's just going, she's dying, and he's like, yeah, that's what happens. That's the dying of the mortality, whatever. That's the humanity in her dying, right, is the thing. And it's just him, and he's just bummed that it's come to this. And he's just like, yeah, I know don't worry, it's going to be fine. And then they get grabbed. This woman's been a vampire for like 30 seconds before she's captured.
I
right?
know, and actually that does lead to how brutal it is, because she is literally saying, like, no, I want this. I am totally aware of what's about to happen, and I get to be her mother forever because I lost my daughter. She shows her little locket. So that makes it doubly tragic.
Yeah.
Claudia has found someone that wants to be her mother forever, and this woman has found a daughter forever, and then 15 minutes later
Nope.
Yep.
they are captured by the Theater of Vampires, and they're split up. Louis is taken and put into a coffin that's chained. He is bricked up behind a wall, and he's screaming for Claudia. It's terrible. Claudia and the lady are dragged in very nightmarish sequences, by the way, by all the theater vampires going wah, wah, and dragged into a like a well. And they're thrown in there. The door is locked, and the sun is coming up. And it's
that is
tough scene, man.
Absolutely
That is
horrifying.
It is a really horrific scene. Yeah.
It reminds you of, like, when you see the like the shadows from Hiroshima, or the bodies from Pompeii, where people, when they know death was coming, all they could do was cling to each other. And it's just mother and daughter up against the wall, and then they catch fire.
And
she tries to shield her from
the sun.
I
know. It's heartbreaking.
You just go like, Jesus, is there not a more a quicker way to execute these people? They left him in there overnight, and then just as the sun, it is so cruel for something. You know, I mean, I don't know. This woman's just here too. She didn't kill anybody. It's just like, and also you're an abomination because you're involved in all this, so you die too, lady.
But also vampires in general. I mean, it just seems like at a certain point, it is almost like, hey, what inventive and fun ways can we kill people? Because they don't care. And of course, even another vampire in this case, they're like going, hoo, we've decided you're evil. You get to die. How will we do it? Oh, I've got an idea.
And unlike killing humans, killing another vampire is more like killing a person. You know, like humans are just, you know, whatever, it's what we eat. Whereas this is like, this has to be, and also they're actors, so they have to be dramatic about it. Come on.
But what we see almost immediately is that Armand, he breaks Louis out. Armand is just so taken with Louis, so he breaks him out of the coffin, out of the wall, and then he's like, why are you saving me? And he's like, well, I kind of dig it. He's like, how is Claudia? He's like, you're not going to enjoy this. Yeah, I couldn't save her. She's gone. And, I do like vengeful Louis, man. I like vengeful Louis.
Now this is my favorite part of the movie, right? Because it's just
it's pretty fucking badass.
Because we're used to him moping the whole movie, so the fact that he's like, oh, he's really upset. He goes, I did go back for vengeance. It's like, yeah,
and
now we're talking.
It's literally, I guess it has to be maybe late afternoon. It's amazing that he's running around, but everyone else is asleep. But he's tossing gas, or I guess kerosene probably, on top of the coffins.
And it's so badass. Like that, he's
so
an
badass.
action movie star. He just like uncaringly like dousing these coffins with
just like he burned down his own house earlier. This is really nicely constructed movie. But he sets a place of light, and then even more badass, because he knows that some of them will get up and try to escape. He has taken the scythe, which Stephen Ray's character used as part of his stage prop. He has that scythe ready, and he's just standing at the door like, come at me. And he's like, whack, whack, whack.
And then
I love it so very much.
Stephen Ray is not intimidated. He's going to face him down with this thing, and he just slices that dude. I love that.
Stephen Ray is one of the ones that does escape the initial flames, and they meet on the stage, or at least, and Stephen Ray is like, I mean, he is very cocky. He's like going, I've been around for a long time. You're going to take care of me? And then
the way he
Louis
cuts
goes,
him,
yes.
It's not a decapitation, and it's not a bisecting. He cuts him in perfectly, so there's head and some shoulder, and it's just...
Well, he does a spin thing, and again, it's all in vampire fast motion. So he does a spin thing, and he's sweeping the scythe up. And as he's sweeping the scythe up with Stephen Ray with like his arms up, it does this diagonal slice. right across his ribs and up to the shoulder, and there's like this,
and then the body just clump to the
ground. And then he just drops aside, and I'm like, done, fucker. Oh, it is great. Yeah. Sorry, it is an awesome scene.
No, it is. It was. Yeah.
They used it in the trailer. I mean, the shot of him. Of Brad Pitt with his hair flying out, he's got the scythe in his hand, running with the flames behind him. It's like, yeah, that was in the trailer.
Because that is the action hero moment, as you're saying, Olivia. Yeah. That of course they use that.
And it's so badass that even though I had just read the book, I had to go back and reread that section and be like, oh, it really is kind of described like that. Like, because I just assumed
you thought that was movied up.
In the book, but it kind of is. He's kind of a badass in that scene.
Cool. I know. It's just like, man, I'm going like, where was this in any other part of the movie? Like where he's just kicking ass. So anyway, though, then he's bummed because he turns down Armand, who's like, dude, we could be so awesome together. He's like, yeah, nah.
And so Armand takes off with his young ward.
Yeah.
His blood bag, and basically, I think then
Armand
we cut to the president.
Fine. He's Antonio Banderas.
It's just Louis going like, I've just been kicking around, really sad for a long time. And,
it is basically Louis going, and then for a long time, nothing happened. Like,
yeah, and then for a long time, and then now I'm in the 80s. And 90s, look at my cool collarless shirt. And
he talks about running into Lestat in the 80s. And he's coming out
Oh, no, that's right. That's right.
I love that it's time-stamped by a screening of the movie Tequila Sunrise.
I know, which Warner Brothers release.
There is the whole thing about, I saw the sun come up again thanks to this new invention. And
every film that they show clip-wise was owned by Warner Brothers at the time. So it's hilarious that it starts with a silent film called Sunrise. Yeah. It is a real one, and then it's Gone with the Wind. Warner Brothers had bought the Turner Classic Movies library, so they had that. Then it's Superman and I'm like, oh my god, I forgot that Christopher Reeve shows up as Superman in my vampire movie, and then suddenly it's
all
like
of my things coming together.
You got your Superman and my peanut butter. No, anyway, so and he's there, and then it's Tequila Sunrise because it's the 80s, and Warner Brothers is going, I guess we have a Sunrise movie from the we do Tequila Sunrise.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I like that movie just fine.
But he does say, I went back home. So this is him in the 80s in New Orleans, which is, and then he smells them? I smelled something I hadn't smelled in a long time.
Yeah. When he smelled
and then that guy in the theater goes, sorry, everybody.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was me. My bad.
But he talks about he smells death, but it's more specific than just death. And he goes down to the sewers where he finds, man, a guy who's been hard living.
Yeah.
Lestat is down here
like, hey, Louie, how you doing? It's been a while.
Bro. Yeah, it is like when you meet your dirtbag high school friend again as an adult. And you're like, oh boy. Yeah, man.
Do you have $20? I just need $20.
Looks like things have been going pretty good for you. Say, hey, I need a little money, just for the bus, man. Just for the bus.
Come on, man. We used to be pals. What happened to you, man? Like, yeah.
Oh, you're too good for me now.
It doesn't. And we talked about earlier. He's afraid of the helicopter, and it is Louis' reaction to when he's afraid of the helicopter is almost like, oh man, what this guy's become, that he's like, oh, make it go
again
away.
The acting is so good from both that Louis is so weirdly sweet to him, and sort of like, it's okay, man, it's okay, it's good to see you, and he's being very solicitous.
Like, hey man, maybe we could like hang out again sometime. And Louis like, I don't know about, probably not a great idea.
Maybe.
And so I give you my phone number, but I'm switching over to a new carrier. I don't know what my number's going to be. Sorry,
I'm like super busy at work right now. So
things are really intense over at MTV.
Yeah. And so
that's where I work now. And it's an 80s montage.
That catches up to modern day. And I just love Christian Slater being like, what do you mean that's it? That can't be the end of the story. There's got to be. And he's like, I don't know what to tell you, man. That's all that happened.
Yeah, I've just brought you up to date. And he's like, but hold on. And then he's like, you're going to turn me into a vampire, right? And he's like, oh, no, that's not what this was about.
It is almost like, did you listen to anything I just said?
It is so funny, like how relentlessly sad he's been for 2 hours.
I know,
And then
I know.
Christian Slater's like, sounds fucking great.
Yeah. What I
Sounds
took
like my kind of party.
what I took
Yeah.
away from this is sign me up.
Yeah. And
Are you kidding
basically,
me?
of course, Louis is disappointed, and he does kind of just like vanish from the room. And so Christian Slater's grabbing his tapes, and he's got his bag. He's running out to the car, like, "Oh, where did he go? Did I miss him? Where's my vampire
my
buddy?"
favorite Christian Slater acting moment is this, when he's playing the tapes back in the car, and he's just oh man, that's good shit.
Yeah, that is good shit.
And then
so he's driving off across the Empire, the
Pride
Empire
goeth
State,
before the
Golden
fall,
Gate
right?
Bridge.
Pride goeth before the fall, because it's Lestat.
Woo!
It is sort of
Lestat
like
looking better than he did in New Orleans,
Yeah.
but still not great until he, while the car is driving, leans over and bites him some Christian Slater, and then he looks all much better. He's like,
By the way,
that really hit the spot.
great Lestat line too. I take it I need no introduction, right? Like
Yeah.
and you're just like, oh.
Like if I had been in the theater, I would have cheered.
It's designed as that. It's so great.
Yeah.
It shows you how much we love the bad guys. That it's Lestat coming back. It's like, yeah, man, he's back, baby.
We love the bad guys if they are charming and
within the world of it, you know, I mean, his whole point is, am I really a bad guy, or is this just the nature of the vampire, right? Sort of thing too.
Is it the nature of the beast?
And then, of course, what song should play but "Sympathy for the Devil"? And because it's
A
1994,
cover version.
well, but because I was going to say, because it's 1994, it's Guns N' Roses doing "Sympathy for the Devil." But oh my god, I mean, it makes me so mad there aren't like 2 more Lestat movies after this, because it is just basically like, you and me, pal, we're gonna have some fun.
It's a crazy missed opportunity. I mean,
where's our Tom Cruise Lestat trilogy? Yeah,
where I don't want to go back and read the books. I mean, I respect them, like I said, and I gave that first couple a go. I don't want to go back and read those, but would I be willing to watch the filmic continuing adventures of Lestat, Louis, Armand? Sure, I would. Well, and now I guess I've got a new TV series.
Well, I was gonna say that's one of the things that's exciting about that, is we are gonna get another crack at it, because there have been attempts to do the Vampire Chronicles. I mean, lest we talk about the musical.
I was gonna bring that up. I'm very glad that you did.
Did you like the musical? Or what there is of it?
Yes.
Oh, I like how timid that came up.
Yes, because it's Elton John and the Vampire Chronicles, 2 things I love deeply.
True.
I actually one of the first things I ever auditioned for was Oregon Children's Theater, and I auditioned with a song from that musical.
Ooh.
And the accompanist stopped. Like, I put the music in front of him, and he stopped and looked at me and said, "Really?" and that was the beginning of my audition.
Wow.
It was very good.
Wow.
And you said, no, turn to the "Can You Feel the Love Tonight?"
Yeah. No.
Can you feel the love tonight?
I did it. I rocked it.
Nice.
Great.
Nice. I love it.
Good for you.
I don't really know the musical, so I'll need to listen to an album or something.
Well, the first song is New Orleans, spooky town, lots of vampires. We better watch out, New Orleans. It's how it goes from there.
That is, in fact, like the first song.
Brendan and I often joke about like the movie adaptations or whatever. We always talk about Sunset Boulevard is the one where it's like, on Sunset Boulevard. You know,
literally has the title track, Sunset Boulevard, Crazy Boulevard.
Yeah,
and I know you're doing a parody of a musical, right?
Yeah.
You've done some good work, sir.
Andrew Lloyd Webber, right?
But you are doing a very bad job here.
The thing that I like about the musical is that there's some like good stuff in there, like character wise, and it's so of its time and so Elton Johnny that it's never gonna be good. Like There's good stuff in there, but it as a
I
whole
think
is
you've come
never
up with
gonna be
a new adjective. It's like,
Elton
how was
John.
dinner? It was kind of Elton Johnny.
good. It
I
was a little Elton
I
Johnny.
don't think it was super well received, if I remember
was not.
correctly. Yeah.
It was not.
Yeah, on paper, though, I remember when they said they were going to do it. I said, "Oh, I'm intrigued." Elton John doing Anne Rice. It was called Lestat the musical. So yeah. But anyway, as we always do at the end of the show, the strongest of recommend. You must watch Interview with the
Oh,
Vampire.
hell's yeah.
Yeah, this is good stuff. Like I said, it's not.
There are vampire movies I like better.
Yes.
There, of course, Dracula is still number one, the mucho awesome guy. But like I said, this is a great examination of vampire life and an engaging story with amazing actors, a great director. Come on, why are you not watching it already? Why am I having to convince you?
It's not.
Go
Ahead.
If you want a hot, sexy vampire movie, watch this movie.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
It's there, but if you're a horror fan, don't be turned off by it being a hot,
No,
sexy vampire.
it's the best of both worlds.
It really does land both because, like I said, on paper, this is not my kind of thing, but I dig this movie. Great actors, good writing, great directing, across the board. It was nominated for production design, which deservedly so, I say.
Yeah. Man,
it's
gorgeous.
just a beautiful movie, and it's a great, big, grand, operatic vampire film, and it's a bummer there weren't more of these, or what more of them there are is terrible.
The bummer really is.
Fingers crossed,
John,
AMC gets it right here, and I'm
yeah,
hearing good
me
things.
too. The bummer is you about to tell me what we're watching next week.
Oh, Jesus, yes. Well, I believe next week on the show, if I'm not mistaken, is a little return to. I believe we're back in the subspecies land, if I'm not mistaken.
We have to watch Subspecies 3 right after watching Subspecies 2?
No, sorry. It is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein next week.
Oh, next week. Okay.
Yes.
It
is
is
Kenneth Branagh's.
Problems, but that's still a lot better than Subspecies.
But then,
All right.
then it's Subspecies. So we get a little break from Subspecies before we get. But we do get Kenneth Branagh. A movie I once again think I like.
You see more shirtless Kenneth Branagh than you do any of these guys in this movie.
Yeah.
That scene with his creation of the monster, where he's between the chains and he's all like
He's running around and he's water's dumping on him like he's in Flashdance. It is
I
hot.
think, if I'm not mistaken, we also see every bit of Robert De Niro in it.
Oh boy. Okay. Well, anyway,
a movie I believe we have separate opinions of, though I'm not as hot on as I am the Bram Stoker's Dracula, but I do like at least I love the intention of it once again.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah.
But again, let us thank Olivia for being so awesome.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. We will definitely have you back. You're going to have to do Queen of the Damned with us, but we'll have you do something good too.
Okay.
Because
Aila, is that how you pronounce the name? Aila.
Aaliyah?
Aaliyah, let's go with that. Yeah. And Stuart Townsend.
Yeah.
Basically all you need.
Stuart Townsend was a thing. The early 2000s was really.
He was a thing.
He was trying. They were trying to make him big time.
They tried hard, and it did not.
I mean, we should have taken. We should have taken the hint when Peter Jackson fired him after like 3 days of playing Aragorn. So
he was Lestat. He was Dorian Gray. Yeah. He was Carl Kolchak. Oh boy. All right. Anyway,
that is going to wrap up this episode of Campbell and Jones Meet the Monsters. I'm John Campbell.
I'm Brendan Jones.
And remember, there are such things as monsters.
And yes, your master is the devil.